It's an exciting time today.
Yes, it is.
So
welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. And today we have a very special guest. Ken Herock is going to join us in just a second. But before we get to Ken, I want to welcome back Vincent Turner. Vincent, you missed yesterday. We had a little family issue going on, but we talked about some things yesterday between the college and the pro game. But welcome back. Thank you for being able to make it through your busy schedule today.
Well, I'd like to say first and foremost, I appreciate everything 100 Yards of Football did yesterday. I like to say you, your son Brian, and our producer Logan Landers, as we say from the 901 in Memphis, Tennessee, the ball didn't drop. Y'all did a phenomenal job. If I was looking at y'all show yesterday, I would put y'all against ESPN, College Football Game Day, and kudos to our producer Logan Landers. By far the best performance he's ever done on 100 Yards Football, and I was very, very proud.
Well, Logan had his A game going on, and so did my son Brian. So I just had to bring it down to, to par level with my mediocre performance. But today we're going to have a guy that has been performing at the high level for a very, very long time. As a high school player, he was phenomenal. He ends up playing in college. He plays in the NFL, the AFL back in those days with a couple of different teams that I want to ask him a couple questions I know I haven't asked before, but then as a scout, a general manager, and now he helps to prep with college seniors and sometimes the juniors to get ready for the interview process that they go through prior to the draft. Ken Herock is with us today. And Ken, welcome to the show. It's an honor for us to have you here on 100 Yards of Football.
Glad to be here, Harper and Vince. Hope we can do a good show here so I don't embarrass you two guys.
Well, it won't take much to do that, but I noticed you're wearing your Raider gear. You have,
of course, I'm in it all the time.
Absolutely goes with you, right? Once a Raider, always
a Raider. And the reason I like it is because it's free. I must have 100 of these shirts and jackets and maybe 150 and shoes. I mean, I would get all kinds of stuff for them because the equipment man, his dad was the original equipment man when I went to the Raiders in 1963. Then her dad passed. He became the equipment man. Very good friends. And I just have to call him, hey, I need this, I need that. And boom, it's right in my house. I mean, I live in it because listen, I don't think I've bought any clothes for the last 20 years, except maybe a sport coat or something to throw on.
Well, if you enjoy wearing black and a lot of it, then obviously you've got the right guy at the right time. I learned in college, Ken, that took me till I was in college to learn that if you get in good with the equipment man, that's the right guy that you want to be in contact with.
That's the right guy. In fact, even when I was scouting, I would always like to go to the equipment man. He knew those players the best, and he would really give you an honest opinion. If they're a badass or something like that, he'd let you know, don't mess with this guy. This guy's trouble or something. You'd find out a lot of good information from the equipment guys.
Yeah, I would imagine that's the same as going to the teacher, the science teacher, and saying, hey, what kind of kid was this guy in school? And
sure.
Did he behave in class? Little tricks of the trade that we'll talk about for obvious reasons. Ken, going back to your high school days, you're from just southeast of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Munhill High. Were you a 3 or a 4 sport guy? Did you end up running any?
I played 4 sports. I played football, basketball. I had offers in basketball. Played volleyball and baseball. In those days, it's not as advanced as it is today. I mean, if you're a football player, it's pretty tough to be playing multiple sports. Your concentration is usually on like my grandson went to the Naval Academy. He was really a good lacrosse player, good wrestler. But after his ninth grade, he was playing varsity in lacrosse in 9th grade and wrestling. He said, "That's it. I'm concentrating on football." Concentrated on football, developed all the skills in that area, and you have to do it because there's so many off-season programs in high school right now. I followed my grandkids when I were playing high school football. The whole summer, soon as they're done it with in the spring after they classes are over for the spring, they go all summer just about. They got camps going on. They have 7s-on-7s. Teams are scrimmaging each other. you can't afford to be a baseball player. Couldn't afford to play another sport. So the thing is, lacrosse was pretty close, and you could have played a multiple lacrosse and football. And I like that lacrosse. Really, I really enjoyed lacrosse because it's close to football. The only thing is, you got a club, you can hit somebody with a club. That was the difference. And it was an aggressive sport, and you have to really be able to run. So the kids that's why they miss being in the sports. I didn't have time to train in anything else. As soon as I was done with football player, boom, basketball court.
Basketball.
Yeah. So basketball was at volleyball court. Then after that, baseball. And then in the summertime, you work out a little bit, get ready for football. So you really didn't have much time to worry about concentration in the sports. That's why kids are better trained, know the sport better than they did years ago. They're so much more involved in it. Quarterbacks right now, a quarterback coming out of high school is probably more advanced than quarterbacks coming out of college 25 years ago, because they're all going to all these camps. Everybody's got a personal trainer. Personal trainer is the big thing. Everybody's got a quarterback guru that's working with the quarterbacks. And they also have other positional areas where players can work. You got offensive line coaches teaching kids in offensive line coming out of high school, preparing them for the college ranks. So it's so much, and even when I go to the colleges right now, when I work in my company that I have, Pro Prep, I go to different facilities. I'll give you an example. Exos. There's 3 of them around the country right now. One's in Pensacola, one's in Arizona, and one's in Dallas. So you got 3 of them. You go there, there's about 100 kids there. They're all training. They're all preparing for the combine. Oh, by the way, I did make base mention. I ran the first combine for National Football Scouting in 1982 when I was a general manager down in Tampa Bay. Ran the first one down there, and so I realized the importance of it, is going through how important it was to do interviews. And that's where my specialty came, doing the interviews. So I prepare these guys for the interviews, and just getting them prepared it's amazing the work that these kids go through. When they're done playing college football, they go right to a training facility.
Yep.
Paid for by the agent. I mean, your agent's probably putting about 35, 40 grand into them to go to a training facility. And those kids are there for 8 weeks preparing for one thing: run the 40, do the shuttle. Your receiver, catch the ball. And it's just simple drills. As I tell the kids, this is the easiest thing in your life. You don't have to hit anybody. You're just being trained. That's it. You can't believe the work now, Harp, that goes into these players as they're preparing for their upcoming venture to the NFL.
Well, it's an amazing amount of it, and not being able to have a guru or a trainer or a nutritionist or somebody who's going to do your weights and your sprints and catch balls for you or do whatever is possible. You almost have to have that now. But before you didn't have that.
I had to do it on my own.
When football was over,
eat a pizza, drink a beer.
The next day you go to basketball practice, and when basketball is over, next day you're hitting curveballs, right?
Yeah, right.
Of all the sports that you ended up playing, which one did you love the most, or which one did you say, man, I this isn't work, this is fun?
I thought it was football, because back when I was playing, I was only 6'2" in high school, 6'2", 225, but I was a pretty good basketball player. But I knew that I'm not going to be a basketball player. I was more of a hit them, knock them down type basketball player. But I had offers to go play, and I said, I don't think I want to do that. I didn't go to little schools. Whereas in football, all of a sudden, here comes Pitt, Penn State, Syracuse, Notre Dame recruiting you. Say, hey, I think it's football. And I dropped. After my senior year, I didn't play baseball because I was getting ready after the volleyball season to go to West Virginia University. So I was now training just for football, and I knew that was it. That was the end of my multiple sports.
A lot of folks today will say that Tony Gonzalez, the Hall of Fame tight end, played collegiately at Cal Berkeley. He played football and basketball. And he said this once, and I really understood exactly what he means. So I'm going to ask you the same thing. He said, football made me a better basketball player. I was tougher. I was meaner. I held my ground a little bit.
I agree.
Basketball made me a better football player. I learned how to pivot and post up and to be able to use my body to get in between the ball and a defender. What did you? I would imagine your athleticism increased.
Well, I'll give you an example. When I decided to go to West Virginia, the decision I made when I was coming out of high school, I'm always thinking of how am I going to be better? How am I going to be better? How can I make sure I'm going to be a star or play? I was going to go to Pitt, but they had Mike Ditka. I was going to go to Penn State, but they have Dave Robinson, the Hall of Fame the linebacker and tight ends, because in those days we played both ways.
Yep.
And they're going to Syracuse. They had a guy named number
John
88.
Mackey.
John
Mackey.
I go to Notre Dame. They had an All-American named Joe Mack. Then I go down to North Carolina. They had a guy named Greenberg. I'm going, why? I'm not going here. West Virginia didn't have anybody. So I don't go there and play right away. So that's the way I analyze it. And that's the reason I picked West Virginia. One of the reasons I picked West Virginia. So that you had to think. Yeah, I was thinking out of the box. But I made this when I was going to West Virginia. One of the stipulations I had was I'm allowed to come out for basketball.
Okay.
So I go down after. In those days, we played a freshman game. We didn't play when you're a freshman. You played a freshman games with freshmen for different teams. So after football season was over, I go down to the basketball court, man, thinking, hey, shit, this is going to be nice. I'm looking at Mike Ditka. He played basketball. I want to play basketball in college too. And he played at Pitt. So I could play against him. So anyway, I go out for the team. I look out there. Jerry West, Rod Hudley, Rod Thorne, Gail Catlett. These are guys in the NBA. And I'm dribbling around. I said, this is for me. I played in the murals.
You got to play with the logo, though. Now, before I go on, your coaching, the recruiting situation to get you to West Virginia changed because your coach was fired after the first year. How did that change it for you?
Well, it was an interesting change because Pappy Lewis recruited me. And in those days, he came to the house, drank beer with my dad. That was probably one of the reasons that I wanted to West Virginia. My dad and Pappy were drinking beer, and I said, he'll take care of my son. He'll give me an education. So my dad never made it through high school. So that was very important. And the recruiting then was after Pappy was gone. See, when I went there, everybody gets something. I didn't have an NIL deal. I didn't make $1 million. My NIL deal into there was a clothing store called Beaforce. I can go in there and they said, sign for clothing. Don't abuse it. Not everybody did. I didn't see many of our guys, but there was a couple of us. So I was always the best dressed guy on the team, or one of the best dressed guys on the team. My parents used to, where are you getting all these nice clothes? I said, well, they manage to give you some little now and then. But the only thing is, no money. The only money I made was off of football tickets. I was allowed 10 tickets. Everybody's getting 4. Those 6 I would sell, maybe make an extra $50, $100 on after a game. But that was that. And then when Pappy left, Gene Corum came in, and Gene was making things different. First thing he made, he says, the guys were all going to start on the same boat here. We're all going to be in the same boat. Some of you guys have special things going on. Those are things that are going to be eliminated, and we're going to all start fresh. As soon as I heard that, man, I walked into his office. I said, hey, Coach, I have a deal with Beaforce. He said, well, that's over. I said, well, if that's over, I'm going to transfer. He said, well, you think about it. So I left. 15 minutes later, Coach was back up. He said, no, we'll take care of that. You ain't leaving. So that was my NIL deal. But that was the only change. The difference was we're going from a transition from a coach that had taken them to the Sugar Bowl to now a coach that just was an assistant, and he was a good coach. But my first year, and I thought we were going to be pretty good my sophomore year. We were 0-8-2.
Ooh.
0-8-2. Second year, we were 4-6, improved. Close games, lost them. Our senior year, we went 8-2. We were in the top 20. Didn't even go to a bowl game though. They didn't have any bowl. They only had about five bowl games back in those days, so we never made it to a bowl game. But if we'd have been now, we'd have been in one of the top bowl games. Would have been maybe eligible to get into the college football playoffs. But we had a bunch of guys that went on to the pros too, and a guy named Tom Woodishek played for the Eagles for a while. Jim Shorty Moss with the Giants, myself, and several other guys that kicked around as free agents, some in the Canadian Football League.
Western Pennsylvania had just a slew of talent back in those days. I mean, you could probably just close your eyes and throw a dart at a map of the western part of Pennsylvania, come up with a kid. Two things. One, you're far enough away from home to where you're not home, but you're close enough to where it's a short drive for mom to do your laundry on the weekends, right?
Exactly, because when I went to Notre Dame, I'll take my first trip in an airplane. And I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to get back home if I'm here? They're going to be flying me home every weekend. So Notre Dame was like ruled out. That was not just because of Mac, the tight end, the All-American tight end they had, but because now how the hell do I get back and forth? Even Penn State, I made 4 visits to Penn State. No, you're allowed in those days. You're allowed to make as many visits as they want. Joe Paterno was an assistant, kept coming to the house, bringing me up to the school 4 times, and they wanted me to take a test. I said, "What do I got to take a test for? No other school wants me to take a test." He said, "Ken, you get in, you got to take this test. It's a requirement at Penn State." I said, "Coach, I'm not doing it." Finally, after the 4th visit, he said, "Ken, you got to do this, or we can't take you." I said, "Well, I ain't coming." Well, I wasn't coming because of Robinson either.
Yeah.
So times have changed, and the see the things that the kids are going through now, and the kids how you get into school is a little different.
Do you think that 8-2 your senior year was a big influence in your getting selected? And I mean, if you're 8-2 like you were your sophomore year,
Yeah.
That might have ruined everything, right? That people just bypass you and they'll find somebody else.
Well, I think they still find players, even if you're on the losing team. If you're a good enough player, you may be a good player on that team, but your team's losing. It's not your fault. They evaluate your ability. So it would have been the same thing. If we 8-2 and 2-8 or 8-2, I still think I would have been signed, be able to get in the National Football League.
Yeah, but overlooked by the NFL, right? You had to go to the AFL. We talked about Buck Buchanan just earlier this week, and Buck was a 19th round selection by the Giants, but a first rounder for Kansas City. That's a no-brainer, Ken. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. Even though it's the different league, there was still that separation of talent, and I don't even know how the wall was divided between the two, but the NFL, of course, is obviously a goal of everybody. But this AFL thing with Denver and Boston and Kansas City and some little place in Oakland you probably never heard of prior to that, they've got a team now. And what was that like for you in the decision process after being selected by the Raiders?
Well, when I was selected, it was really, really funny. It was right after the season. I didn't get drafted, and so we're sitting down. I roomed with 3 other football players in the house. We had a house, and the house was a mess. And this is after the season now, and it's winter times is coming on. It's cold outside. No
beer cans or.
Yeah. We're sitting around drinking some beer, watching TV, sitting around in our underwear, t-shirt and underwear. There's a knock on the door. So I said, you get it. So I get my ass up and I go get it. And I open the door, and it's one of our assistant coaches, and there's a coach with them, some guy with them. And he said, "Hey, this is Ollie Spencer. He come here to sign you." He said, "Mr. Davis from the Raiders wants you to sign with the Raiders." So I'm thinking, holy shit, I've got beer laying around here. I'm in my underwear. I just blew it. They ain't going to sign me. The boy, I got dressed, we went out, and eventually I signed with the Raiders. But that was my first exposure to the national, I always call it National Football League, and being able to show them what I have, and I'm in my underwear.
Well, it was a different process back then than the way it is now. Even back in the 70s, I read a story in Sports Illustrated where Jim Plunkett in 71, Dan Pastorini, Joe Theismann, Ken Anderson were all in the same draft class. And the article just talked about how different each one of them was and how they found out. Theismann was playing basketball on a different part of campus. You were having something cold to drink in your skivvies with a bunch of wrappers. I'm sure there needed to be a cleanup of sandwich wrappers and clean plates in the kitchen.
You can imagine we're all 4 football players, and nobody wants to pick anything up.
No. Well, you probably use some of that ticket money to hire a maid to come in every week.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Twice a year.
My mom would come down. My parents would come down for a football game. And they'd come over. My mom would always come over to the house. I got to clean this place up. It's a mess. So she'd come down on the weekends when we were home, and she would come over and clean the damn house for us.
Come on, Mom, get to work. We'll go to the game a little bit later. Well, an interesting story there, and obviously the relationship. Did your first year with the Raiders, was that when they had the black helmets with the white stripe?
No, we went to the silver helmets. Yeah, we already had the silver helmet, I believe. I don't remember.
You know what I'm talking about?
I know what one you're talking about. I think that was prior to '63. Davis came in and changed all that in '63. It was 60 to 62 where they had that other colored jerseys and pants and helmets. Yeah. And Al came in and did the silver and black. And the story goes, why did he do silver and black? Somebody said he was colorblind. This is just true story. So everybody said he was colorblind. That's why he went to silver and black. And he couldn't see red, he couldn't see blue, green, whatever. Everything was to him. It was always the silver and black. So that's how the silver and black came.
Wow.
Well, that's the story I hear, so I don't know if it's true or not.
Well, I have 1,000 questions about Al, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Vincent, I've been hogging up the whole interview. I'm sorry. We're just now at the point where Ken has gone through high school, he's gone through college, and now he is going to be a professional athlete.
That's no problem, because I got a lot of questions from Mr. Ken. So I'm going to piggyback to your West Virginia days. Talk about how Mr. Sam Huff, Bruce Bosley, and Bobby Moss impacted your career at West Virginia. Then I'm going to say this, that I came very impressed with you, Mr. Ken. I'll go back to your senior year in 1962. I'm going to start with your career stats, though. You played tight end and linebacker.
Both ways. You had to play both ways. Played almost 60 minutes a game.
You had 109 tackles. But what's impressive, you had 60 solos. But this is what I really loved about you when I did my research. Your best game. Give your memory bank here. October the 27th, 1962 against Oregon State.
I know that game, right. We got our asses beat out there. And first of all, it was a long flight from Pittsburgh. We're playing the game in Portland, Baltimore Stadium. Long flight. Everybody's bitching and moaning. And we go to the game. We lose the game. They're bitching and moaning. Well, the long flight, blah, blah, blah. We were tired. I said, Jesus, come on. We're 20 years old. We were young guys. Who the hell's tired? They just beat us. They out-coached us. We didn't know how to stop them. They had Terry Baker, Heisman Trophy winner. How can we stop him? And we knew that's how we lost the game. Not that we were tired. I said, don't blame it on being tired. Guys are bitching and moaning. I said, quit it. They just beat our ass.
And then the end of the year, you go into Archibald Stadium in Syracuse, New York, and you shocked the world beating Syracuse 17-6.
Yep.
But what really amazed me, you beat that Syracuse team that had John Mackey, who you just mentioned, Jim Nance, and Walt Sweeney, and y'all shocked the world.
That's
Talk
right.
About the game.
That's what I thought. When I saw Mackey, I was like, shit, I'm as good as Mackey. But I really wasn't.
And then talk about your time when you finally went to the Raiders. And I really want to know this information here. You got there in 63. Talk about your teammates before you went on to that Super Bowl team. Tell me a little bit about Art Powell, Cotton Davidson, the Hammer Fred Williamson, Billy Cannon out of LSU, Fred Biletnikoff, and Jim Otto. Tell me about them years right there when you first got to the silver and black.
When I got there to the silver and black, Art Powell was there. The Hammer was there. They were good. They were quality players. They didn't have a tight end. I came in as a linebacker. I thought I was a better linebacker than I was a tight end. So I'm out there for about 10 days playing linebacker. Then Mr. Davis finally comes to me and he says, listen, I'm going to move you to tight end. I'm thinking, oh, shit, I'm going to get cut now. What are you going to do? He said, no, you're going to be my starter. I said, oh, yeah. So I'll make the switch back to tight end. And I went on from there, and I became his starter. And we had great players. I mean, in fact, Al that year was coach of the year in '63, and when we had a good record. We were beaten out in the championship game by San Diego, but we had great players. Eventually, we had good players. Art's a Hall of Fame player in my mind. If you ever saw Art Powell playing what he can play in his game now, and he'd be catching 100 balls a year. But he was a quality player. The Hammer was a very good player. He got exposed against Green Bay when he went to Kansas City. They went after him and kicked his butt, but he was a very good player for us, a very good guy. Cotton Davidson, he's the old school guy. Good quarterback. Him and Tom Flores. Flores was our first quarterback, and then when he got hurt, Cotton stepped in and played, and Flores eventually went on to be a Hall of Fame coach, and still have a contact with him. Very good guy. But eventually he started getting players like Fred Biletnikoff, Gene Upshaw, Art Shell. We had Jim Otto. I could still see Jim Otto in a huddle. We line up in a huddle. The tight end, Harp, you would know, you're always facing usually the center or the guards right there. And I could always look at Otto. And after about 3 or 4 plays, there'd always be blood coming down his face. He used to wear that helmet that had the little hook over here. Hit that on his nose. Next thing you know, there's blood everywhere. And I says, holy crap, what's he doing in there? It must be really bad to be playing in the inside there. So anyway, that was some of the great players. And eventually we went on. Al started accumulating more and more players. In my year, we went to the Super Bowl. Finally, they figured me out and replaced me with Billy Cannon. So I was Billy Cannon's backup my 5th year there with the Raiders. That's when we went to the Super Bowl because they were talking about speed at the position. Billy can run in those days. He can run a 4.5, and that was if he was in these days now, he'd be running 4.4. But he could really run. He was a good, very very talented athlete. He played running back, obviously, at LSU, and then when he went to the Houston Oilers and then came to us, played running back for us for a year, and then eventually they tried him at tight end, put him at tight end, and gave him the starting job because of the speed. And there he is, 33. He was a good, very good player, very good guy. Became a dentist. Wound up going to prison for counterfeiting. And I always regret that his son played at Texas A&M. Texas A&M. He never really got to see him play live because he was in prison. Got to see him. I always felt sorry for him because of that and from the communication. I always told him he was a great player. Went on to be a first-round pick too. So and also he was a baseball player too. But that's how we started to develop that team. We traded. He got another quarterback. We got rid of Cotton. Got rid of Flores. Brought in LaMonica. We had a guy named Warren. Well, we really had some really talented players. Big Ben Davidson, y'all remember him, number 8. Yeah. Big 6'6". Eventually, Al brought in the talent. He just had the eye for the talent, and I thank him for everything that I have. I owe everything to him because he brought me into the league. I stayed with him for many years, but I wanted to move on. I was just after Ron Wolf left to go to Tampa, I became the director. I was in charge of personnel with him. But you're not in charge. There's one man in charge, and that was Mr. Davis.
Yeah.
And I would just feed him information, and we'd go on. So I thought to myself, well, I got this information. Why can't I be doing what he's doing? Why can't I be a general manager? So that's when I decided I got to move on, and that's when I moved on to Tampa Bay. Ran that organization, ran the Falcons, and ran. Then wound up in Green Bay as a vice president under Ron Wolf in personnel, every time though, I only lasted about 10 years with a team. They figured me out after 10 years. I screwed it up. That's that bad. after 10 years was over, I'd go on. But in between, I had to have a job. So I'd go right back to Mr. Davis. I would work for him for a year, then I'd get another job. So he was very instrumental in everything that I've done, everything that I do. In fact, right to this day, Mark, his son, I still do a lot of work for Mark. I do a lot of work in regard to interviewing all the coaches and GMs that come in. I do all the interviewing for him. He listens. He makes the hire after we go through the interview process.
Wow.
So, I like I said, I thank the family, his family, for everything they've done for me and my family. You look back, you wonder, how did you get to this position you were? Well, I know how I got there.
Hey, Ken, real quick, I'm going to interrupt Vincent.
Okay.
Logan, do me a favor and put the picture back of Cannon, because in the background, you're going to see a stadium full of people. And the neat thing about that for me is that the business of football was beginning to change. And you started to notice full stadiums and people coming out in ways to watch the AFL just as much as what the NFL was. What was the mindset, either during the off season or when it's time to sign your contract, that you understood the business of the game, which is TV is increasing, viewership is going up, and people sitting in the stands are also on the rise, to where this is a very competitive game that we've got. We're in two separate leagues, but we're getting better each and every day.
Well, I can give you an idea. When I first went to the Raiders, I'm coming from West Virginia. Our stadium maybe held 40,000 people, but I played against Penn State that maybe had those days about 60 or 70. Right. And so I go to my first Raider preseason game. It's like a high school stadium. It was at Merritt College down there in Oakland, and they had the stadium there. And I'm going, Jesus, Pete, this is the pros. I went from Morgantown to Oakland. I'm going backwards. But, the crowd was there. The people were there for us. And eventually, as we became a better team and winning, and they built us a stadium, the Oakland Raider Coliseum.
Yeah.
And that's where people were coming there, crowded. We're AFL, but we're NFL. We have now talent. Our talent was just as good as the talent in the National Football League. We played the Super Bowl against Green Bay. They beat us, but we knew we had as much talent as them, but they just beat us because they had better players, Green Bay. Yeah. If you look at all the Hall of Fame players, but then I look back now, we had a lot of Hall of Famers on that football team too. And so eventually that's how I started to see it. In fact, I can remember after I signed my first contract, which was for $1,500 and an $8,500 salary, $10,000, $10,000. My dad, when I signed, he said, "Son, you're rich." I said, "Dad, what do you mean rich?" He says, "You're rich." My dad was making $3,500 in a steel mill.
Wow.
So I was rich in his mind, but I wasn't rich. So then I go to sign my next contract with Mr. Davis. And so he says, "Ken, I'm going to give you a raise." I said, "Oh, good." I'm thinking maybe it's going to be $5,000 or something. He says, "I'm going to give you a $1,500 raise." $1,500 raise. I said, "Well, that makes it $11,500. He said, and I said, "I got my wife's having a baby. We're having a baby. I got hospital bills." He said, "I'll take care of the hospital bills for you." Wow. I took care of the hospital bills. The hospital bills in those days. My wife stayed there for a couple of days. That was a couple $100. The team doctor delivered the baby. So everything was free.
He was on a retainer.
That's negotiations.
Yeah.
That's how you negotiate. So I said, "Oh boy, I ain't going to let this happen again." So eventually, I got myself up. Guys weren't making that much money in those days either. So
no,
it wasn't like I was underpaid. Everybody was underpaid.
But San Diego built a stadium, and then Denver built a stadium, and then Kansas City. Right. What was it like going to Kansas City for the first time? And they weren't playing in Arrowhead. They had a smaller field.
Yeah, Memorial Stadium. Yeah, we played there. It was a big stadium. It was we got good crowds. We were getting 30, 40,000 people at those times. Super Bowl, the Super Bowl was a sellout when we played the Super Bowl. We were getting crowds. The NFL, you can see now the AFL was on the rise. It was on the rise. And I just saw I saw it all. I saw how it grew, and I can see the business part of it from the standpoint of the fans coming to see us, and the contracts starting to get better. I started getting paid a little bit better, so that was a nice part of it. I can still remember playing in the Super Bowl and getting that big Super Bowl check after the game. That was nice.
What was that? A couple $100 extra? Did you
Yeah. It was about $2,500, $3,000 anyway. That was a lot of money in those days.
Yes, it was. Yeah, comparatively.
Yeah.
Hey, before we go on to Cincinnati and all that, you're 5 years with the Raiders. What changed most for you? You've already mentioned that the fact that more people are coming, but the talent level was getting better each and every year. And obviously a few years later with the Super Bowl, but the accumulation of guys and Al Davis's ability to recognize who could play and who could help this team versus our opponents. Like, for example, you mentioned Gene Upshaw. Was Gene a draft pick that was
first round draft pick? Yeah.
He was put there to block Buck Buchanan, who you had to go against two times.
Gene was 6'5". We wanted big guys. Al's team is big, and speed.
We're big impressive off the bus, right? As soon as we get off the bus.
That's right. You're scared when you come up. Because when we used to play San Diego, and Al used to be at San Diego before he came to the Raiders, that was always the team that we had to look up to. And when we played in that old Balboa Stadium, when you came out of the locker rooms came through, and there was an area where it's like a basketball courts and stuff, and they would walk out, and we'd be walking out, standing in that court area before we went on the field. We'd be looking at everybody. Everybody's so big. You're going, holy crap, look at those guys. How come we don't have a chance? But we did beat them. So Sid Gilman was coaching at that time, and he was not. There's a legend right there, Sid Gilman.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in the Army days, right? He coached the Army.
Oh yeah, right. Yes. Then the San Diego is where he really developed his passing game, and Lance Allworth and Hadel and all those guys. Yeah. See, I'm talking those names. People listen, they don't even know who those guys are. I'm just talking about probably.
Well, I'm a Rams fan, and John ended his career in now Sid. You see, he's got a sweater there, and he always wore a bow tie, didn't he? He never wore
a bow tie. You got it right.
Yeah.
A sport coat with a bow. In those days, coaches wore sport coats and ties on the sideline,
and a fedora hat, and you always
sometimes a hat. Yeah. You know what? There was even guys smoking a cigarette on the sidelines in those days. In fact, I was always shocked. I never smoked, and I'm going into my rookie year. We're in the locker room at halftime. There's guys lighting up, smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
I'm going, what the hell? That's the way it was, though.
If Logan can find it, there's a great picture of Len Dawson at halftime of Super Bowl I in the LA Coliseum, where he's got a Fresca and he's smoking a Camel filterless.
Yeah. I can believe it. Yeah.
Unbelievable back in the day. Well, you mentioned Sid Gilman. Can I ask a couple of Paul Brown questions in terms of his influence, his ability to break down an offense? Was that a learning session for you as well as, I'm going to play for this guy, but man, he does things that are light years ahead of what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, I was with the Raiders, and after the third preseason, going to our last preseason game, I got released.
Your Super Bowl. That's your Super Bowl right there. That's Super Bowl II. So Len was smoking in Super Bowl I and in Super Bowl II.
Okay, that's unbelievable. Holy cow. I look at it. Is that a cigar or is that a cigarette? It looks like he has a beard down there. That's not a Fresca.
Well, yeah, it's a pop, whatever kind of pop it is.
But my first exposure to Paul Brown was I got released. I fly into Cincinnati that evening, take the red eye to Cincinnati. I got in there like 6 o'clock in the morning. I get a little nap. I go. They take me to the facility, get my pads on and everything. Go out to a practice. So I'm out at practice, and I don't know the plays. I'm just standing around. And I go to take off my helmet, and I said, "Holy shit! Nobody else has their helmet on." Off. Then somebody said, "Hey, you better put your helmet on before Paul sees you." The helmet goes back on. Paul was very straight, man. Everything you did was by the book. I'll give you an example. When you came out on the field, he had a drill called "Go to the Ground." Every group, the receivers, tight ends, you had a session. Everybody, quarterbacks, linemen. You had to tackle one. I'd have to tackle one of the tight ends, take him to the ground. Now, next he'd get up, tackle me, go to the ground, because he wants you to get used to being on the ground, getting up and jumping up and play. That was just the start of his practice. But after I got there, I played my last preseason game there against. We're down in Memphis playing the Jets, and so after the game, we're coming flying back, and they make an announcement that if you get a card that's telling you to come to the office, report to the office on Monday morning. I didn't get a card. If you didn't get a card, you went to the right to the facility. So the guys that got the card, they were gone. So now I get the card, and I made the team. And so now, Paul, after you made the team, the guys that just came in, he talked to you individually, brought me in and said, listen, I'm watching you all the time. I watch where you go. I watch what you do. If you don't do what I ask you to do, you won't be here. It's very simple. He says, I'm a family man. Are you married? Yes. I said, I want your wife here. So as soon as I got out of the office, I called my wife, get the hell in, I'll go over here. So that's the way he was. And so everything he did was stricken by the book. And he would tell it straight. When I used to go to meetings, after the meetings, the way he talked to guys, I can remember we had a punter, and he told the kid, he says, you keep punting like that, you're not going to be punting anywhere. You're going to be punting somewhere in junior high again. That's just the way he was. And he would read you out and let you know how good or how bad you were. And I enjoyed playing for him. And I can remember my next year when I came in, I would have made the team, but I got an injury. They had another tight end they used. They tried him, and then I was put on waivers. So he takes me in the office and he says to me, Kim, he says, you've had a good career. He says, it's fine. It's time for you to go into your career, your new career. I'm thinking, what's he talking about? My new career? What the hell, my new career? I'm playing football. So he says, it's time for you to get started on your life's work.
Yeah.
And that was it. So, but I got claimed by the New England Patriots, Boston Patriots at that time. Went up there and played a year. But that was another story. I've been tight end for 7 years. I'm going up to Boston Patriots, and they had a guy named Cleve Rush was the head coach. So I go in, and I wasn't sure I was going to go. Mr. Davis calls me and he says, "Do you want to go up there, or do you want to come back here and I'll get you started? We'll get you started in personnel and stuff." I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, you think about it." So I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. I want to go up." He said, "Okay, let me negotiate a contract for you." I said, "Good." So he knows Cleve, and he says, "Hey, if you're going to take this guy, bring him up there." He gets me a 6-game guarantee. I'm coming off the waivers. And I get a 6-game guarantee. But after I signed the contract, Cleve says, "Listen, I'm moving you to linebacker." I said, hold it. I said, "Coach, I'm a tight end." He said, "I know what you are. I saw you play 7 years ago against Penn State. You had 16 tackles. I thought you'd be a better linebacker. So I'm going to use you as a linebacker." So that year, I was farting around as a linebacker. I'm going into my last preseason game there. I'm lining up against Denver. I'm a linebacker. I haven't played since back to college days. But I made the adjustment, played there a year. And that's when I knew it's time for me to move on into my life's work.
Hey, Ken, was John Bull Bramlett there when you were there?
John Bull, I had a room with him.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah. What a character he was. I had to get out of there. I had a room with him. He was such a wreck when you were there. I mean, I walked into the room. He has the mattresses off. He's laying on the floor, and he's always walking. We're moving around. I said, "Holy crap! I can't live with this guy." So the next game, I told the coach, "I can't room with this guy." So they moved me with somebody else.
John's a Memphis guy, Vincent.
I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was a good guy. Became of all the things you can became a pastor.
Yes, he did.
Oh, really? He's from the 901.
Yes, he is.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm from the 901, Mr. King.
Okay, good.
And
a lot of good players come out of there.
You played with Mr. Harry Schultz too.
Harry Shue, yes, he was. He was a good player. Starting right tackle for us for a long time. Very good player. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I got 2 questions right quick. My first question, tell us about the great man out of Grambling State, Willie Brown. And then I want you to talk about when you was a personnel executive, talking about the Raiders team in 76 that went 13-1 and had that defense that had everybody scared. John Matuzak, Otis Sistrunk, Charles Fieldlaw, Willie Hall, Monty Johnson, the Mad Stork, Ted Hendricks, Neil Cozy, Dr. Death, Skip Thomas.
Oh, you got them all.
George Atkinson, Morris Brown, led by the assassin, D. Ohio State, Jack Tatum. Those are my 2 questions right there.
Well, I'll tell you, that was a great team. And I was a part of helping that team because I can remember my first year scouting, 1970. We only had 2 scouts. Ron Wolf had everything west of the Mississippi. I had everything east of the Mississippi. So I'm going into Ohio State. There's this guy, man. He's a hitter. Jack Tatum. Now, we never timed Jack Tatum, but they said he was the fastest guy on the team. They timed him themselves. They said he's the fastest guy on our team. So I think that's pretty fast at Ohio State. And I know he hit. But we never brought him in for these combines, never worked, never did it. Met him at an all-star game. Mr. Davis said hi to him, met him, and that was it. Now we're going into the draft. And now we're also going into the East. Bowling Green, Phil Villapiano.
Yeah.
Then Penn State, a center we drafted out of there. So I'm thinking, holy crap, I'm drafting these guys. I hope I know what I'm doing. And so we drafted those guys. Fortunately, they all three turned out. Kogel was the center. They all turned out pretty well. And so that was the start of my scouting then. And I could see how we built that team. I knew the players we had we were getting were good because I was involved with the Stork trade. I was Mr. Davis wanted me to go to the Green Bay game, and so in those days, it's a Stork. They're going to trade the Stork. I have to trade the Stork. I go watch him play. I said, I don't know why they're going to trade him. This guy's so goddamn good. He said, I know it, but we're going to get him. I said, well, let's get him. So he gets him. So that was acquiring good players, and I was through some Otis Sistrunk. You may hear Otis Sistrunk, the man from Mars. Well, Mr. Davis sends me and Wolf down to the L.A. Rams. They want to trade him, so they're going to let us watch him in drills. So we're watching Otis Sistrunk in drills, and I'm looking around. I said, "You see what I'm seeing? He's the best goddamn guy they have. Why would he want to trade? What's wrong with this guy?" So we get on the phone with Al. Say, hey, yeah, get the trade done. This guy he's their best player. So that's how we get Otis. And I don't know what the hell they let him go for. But it also works in reverse. One year, he sent me back to Baltimore. And we're going to make a trade for a defensive lineman. And great, the name skips my mind right here. I go right now, drawing the blank. Anyway, Bubba Smith.
Oh, Bubba, yeah.
So Bubba Smith, coming off of an injury, off of a knee injury. So I go into the Baltimore camp, and a guy named George Young was the general manager. George Young. And George was a nice guy. You'd never think he would do anything devious. So I'm watching the drill. I'm watching him beat the tackles, and when they're going on one-on-one, I see what they're doing, man. He's really having a great practice. I said, Al, his knee's fine. Let's get him. We get him. His knee isn't fine. They set me up. What they did, they had all the practices geared so that they let him win the matches. Yeah. I told George, what did you say? Well, we're just doing my job. Okay. Yeah, you're doing your job. He did his job. He got us to trade for him. He turned out to have a couple good years with us, but he was at the end of his career then. But that's how I got taken.
Some other players I want to mention quickly off that 76 team. Tell us a little bit about Art Shell, Clarence Davis, Ken the Snake Stabler, Henry Lawrence, the man from Colorado with the speed, Cliff Branch, and a man that always looked like he was a nerd, Mr. Dave Casper out of Notre Dame.
Well, I was involved in drafting a lot of those guys, recommending those guys. Mr. Davis drafted, I recommended. Starting with Casper, I go there. He was a guard and a tight end, and I was coaching tight ends back with the Raiders then, and I coached him for a year, and he was a backup to a guy named Bob Moore. Bob wasn't near as good as Dave, but Dave wasn't ready. In fact, Dave, after his first year, Madden was going to move him to guard because he got himself up to about 255. In those days, that was a good sized guard.
Yeah.
We tried him at guard, and the first thing he said after the practice, he says, "I'm not playing guard." He says, "Well, you get your ass down to 240 again, and you'll be back at tight end." He did. In fact, it's really funny. I always looked at that because I was a tight end, and I can remember my freshman year during the season, our guards were hurting at guard. And so he said, "Ken, get up there and guard, show them how to block, how to do all that stuff." So I go in and block somebody. He says, "Well, you know what? There's a good chance we might be playing you." I said, "Oh, wait a minute. I ain't playing no guard.
Yeah.
I know how to play against. I ain't playing against those guys." And I refused to play it. I was like Casper. But then we go on to Cliff Branch. Cliff Branch had the reputation of dropping a lot of balls coming out of college. We got him. And man, he was dropping balls. And it was one of those, how's he going to keep? How's he going to play? How's he going to keep doing it? And I said, we'll make him a player. We'll make him a player. We'll make him catch the ball. Well, he did. He made him catch the ball and come on. He's a Hall of Fame player. Cliff was a great player for us. Fast guy. I mean, you talk about the fast guys in the league right now, whoever they are, he's just faster or faster. That's all he was. The Snake. I was there when we drafted him. I was playing. They brought him into camp. I look at this skinny this guy can't play. Left-handed quarterback. Didn't even know what the hell he's doing. We sent him off to the Continental League for a year. Comes back a couple of years later. He's a backup to Monica. Eventually went in, be a starter. And you know the history of him. Going to Art Shell. Art Shell as a rookie was just a backup, floundering around, but big, fast. Benji, Hall of Fame player. I mean, we just had so many good players. Davis, I mean, undersized running back, but man, in those days he was quick, fast, catch the ball. He had the great catch against Miami where he won the game. Just terrific players that we had back then. Go on and on about them, and just so many. And Nil Colsey, I can remember drafting Nil Colsey. I was scouting, and I'm thinking, I hope I'm right about this guy. He can play corner. We have great corners. Every corner we usually had was going to be in the Hall of Fame. Well, Neil eventually had a drug problem. I went down to Tampa Bay, and when I was in Tampa Bay, I brought him in, and I told Neil, and I said, "Neil, listen here. You touch any drugs, if anything happens while you're here, while I'm here, you're gone. That's how fast you're out of here." He had a good year for me. Going into the second year, it started to touch a little bit of the drugs, and he was out, and that was the end of it. But he was a great talent. So I can go on and on of all the players. I mean, there's just so many players that I thought were, and I was proud of the fact that I was able to room with Fred Biletnikoff, that I knew these guys, and I played with them.
Yeah.
And when I was scouting, one of the things I always thought about, hey, Ken, you're playing with Art Shell, Gene Upshaw, Jim Otto, Bob Brown, Harry Shue, Fred Biletnikoff, they named an award after him, Willie Brown. So I start thinking, I'm starting. So there's more to it than just being a Hall of Fame player. There's a lot of players out there that can play that won't ever get that recognition. They're all good players, but they won't get it because there's just so many, just not good enough. Probably didn't play enough. I didn't play 10 years, only played 7 years. I didn't make a Pro Bowl or anything like that. I played though. So I always looked at it and says, there's a lot of players that we can bring in that can play, help our team win. Because I helped our team win. And that's what I start looking for. How do these kids help our team win? Maybe they won't be all pros, but they're going to be good players for us.
Yeah, and
I can recognize the top elevations of players. Now I got to find those guys, the guys that fill in and play.
Yep.
That's the guys I start figuring out how to do it. And there's a lot of those out there, so you got to figure them out.
Well, a lot of good players can turn into great teammates that become great teams. Pete Banaszak, Mark Van Egan.
You got him right there. They're not in the Hall of Fame. They were great players.
Great players for the Raiders, right?
Yes.
And John Vella went to my high school, and then he went to USC.
John Vella's another one. Yep.
Yeah, just a solid tackle that. And here's the thing: my follow-up question to Vincent is, as good as these rosters were, it seemed like the Raiders would finish second every year to the Baltimore teams or the Kansas City team that went to the Super Bowl, or to the Dolphins.
What about the Pittsburgh team?
And then I was going to get there, but yeah, eventually you finally got your first, and then Tom gets a couple others. But talk about finishing second every year in the championship game to whoever it was that would end up being the Super Bowl champions.
I'll always never remember. We drafted a guy. The name skips the line right now, but we think of it. Anyway, we drafted him, and we went to meet him at the airport and bring him in. We're going to have a sit down, just a little bite to eat with the player, Gene Upshaw, myself, and John Madden was the head coach. So this kid walks in, big guy, first I think he got lost coming in. We had to wait a little while. By the time we got him in, we weren't ready to eat. Was ready to go home. Brought him in, and he comes in there and says, "Hey, Coach Madden, pleased to meet you. Coach, I come here to make you a winner." Because we were always second place. John heard that. From that day on, he hated that guy. Charles Filia. That was the guy's name, Charles Filia. But he come in there, "Coach, I come here to make you a winner." Well, he did. He didn't attribute much to it, but he did become a winner.
John
Vella and Archell.
Yep.
See the tie?
Yeah. He stopped wearing them later on. All right, talk about this too, because when John gets the job, you were playing. Is that correct still? And then you became you got to tell the story about when you're the special teams coach and the day that you're supposed to coach Jim Otto, Ray Guy, and George Blanda. And tell that story real quick.
Okay. Here I am. I'm a rookie coach. I just got done playing, and I'm special teams and tight ends coach. And so I'm coaching George Blanda. I don't coach George Blanda. All I would say is, "Hey, good kick, George. Way to go, George. Hey, George, time to go here." Didn't have to worry about the snap. I knew where the snap was coming. Didn't have to coach anything. The tight ends I coached, I had to coach them. But the special teams part, I had to coach the special teams. The punt coverage really tough because I had a slow punter, and I had to have protection first, cover second. Where we used to try cover and make the tackle. I had a slower team going down there because of the protection. But that was my coaching. I didn't really want to coach after my first year coaching. See, John lived in my neighborhood. We live close to each other. So he asked me to coach. So I coached. So I figure I'm coaching. I'm driving John every morning to work. Pick John up, take him to work. We coach together. Practice is over. The meetings are over. 9, 10 o'clock at night, I'm driving John home. Next morning, pick John up. Coaching, pick John up, take him home. So after the season, I told John, "John, I don't really want to coach." He said, "Ken, stick to coaching. You'll be a head coach one day. It'll all fall in. It'll happen." I said, I want to be a GM, John." He said, "What do you want to be a GM for?" "So I can hire guys like you, John." And I said, "Plus, I'm tired of hauling your ass every day and back and forth to practice." But that was it. I had to go through Mr. Davis, and Mr. Davis wanted me back in personnel, and I was glad to have that opportunity again.
But when you coached linebackers, you actually took John's job when he became the head coach, right? You were the
no. John was a linebacker coach. I coached the tight ends, special teams. Yeah. See, in my day when I was there, originally when I went there, we had 2 coaches on defense and 3 on offense, and include the head coach. We had a secondary coach, and we had Tom Doms was line coach, and the other guy coached the tight end, coached the linebackers and secondary. On offense, Johnny Roush. He was a quarterback coach, running back coach. Ollie Spencer coached the offensive line and tight end. Al Davis, head coach, worked with receivers. That's all we had.
Wow.
So after 4 years, we hired John Madden. The year we go to the Super Bowl, we hired John Madden. He coaches the linebackers. We have now 6 coaches. That's it. Now we have, I go to these staffs. I go out to the Raiders. I can't count how many coaches they have. They must have 25 coaches at least. I go into the personnel meetings with the scouts where I used to have me and Wolf put the board together. There's 25 guys in a room.
Yeah.
I said, where do you go? He says, oh, I got a little bit of the Northeast. Oh, where do you go? I got somebody in the Northeast. I said, where do you go? I go to Southeast. Where do you go? I go a little bit in the South. Well, what the hell? Everybody's got about 5 schools to cover. So it's really different, but it's so competitive. That's why they do it. So you cut down on mistakes, yet still mistakes are made.
Well, you and Ron, when did you first meet with Ron? Was that obviously with the Raiders, but you're scouting together, left half of the Mississippi, right half of the Mississippi, and you developed a friendship that really, and Bill Parcells, the 3 of you are inseparable when you get together at those meetings, right? At
the Combine, yeah. When we go down to Combine, Bill will always join our little group. We had a little group down. Al Davis would be there, Parcells, myself, Ron. Just a couple, maybe a couple. Then maybe we let somebody else come in now and then. But that was pretty much our group.
Well,
at the Combine.
My agent Frank Bauer used to say, "Hey, there are coaches and there are scouts and stuff, and they knew when the 4 of you were sitting in a booth at a restaurant or something like that, don't go near it because you're just going to get chewed up. That's your time, and you better respect it. Leave it alone." So nobody was able to penetrate into that circle, were they?
Yeah, no, that's it. That we started to quiet up when somebody else would come in. We wouldn't talk about it. Mr. Davis always wanted to be at the starting line where the guys ran the 40.
Yeah.
He wanted to see their takeoff and see how they ran. That's all he wanted to see. He didn't worry about him catching the ball out there. He says, because he'd always says, I ain't worried about him catching the ball. We'll teach him how to catch the ball. I used to think to myself, wait a minute, the first thing I look for in a receiver, can he catch the ball?
Yeah.
And he always says, Cliff Branch. Well, we also drafted one guy a few years back, late in his career. It's fast as hell. I can't think of his name right now. Can ran like 4.2s, 4.3, whatever it was. But he couldn't catch a ball, and finally they cut him. And that was his Cliff Branch, but it never turned out that way.
Willie Fernandez?
No. He was.
Come out the young man out of Maryland, Darius Haywood.
You got it. Yes, you got it. You knew the name. That's good. Out of Maryland, yes. And I can remember after he drafted, I came into camp, and he said, "Okay, tell me about my receiver." I look at him for about 15, 20 minutes, watch what he's doing. The half hour goes by. He says, well, what do you see? I said, he can't catch a ball. He never will. He can't stand. He has to catch everything in the ball. He's a body catcher. He'll never do it. Oh, no, we taught Cliff. I said, well, if we taught Cliff, maybe he could teach him, but I don't see it. And this one here failed on him. So.
Well, you had Cliff on one side, and then the other is Fred Biletnikoff, who couldn't outrun anybody. But
wait a minute, couldn't outrun anybody.
He's never going to drop the ball. He's never going to drop the ball.
Fred could run.
Yeah,
that was one thing you didn't know about him. People thought slow white guy. No, Fred was a fast white guy. You didn't, and he was so precise in all his angles and the way he attacked the game.
Yeah,
and the quickness and speed. He's not going to run no 4.3, 4.4, but he would run in these days 4.5s
with pads on. Yeah,
he would run. So I they just talked about his speed. I never questioned his speed. Now I always question is he could ever get back up, because he wasn't really a physical looking guy, but he can catch the shit out of the ball. Now nowadays guys have gloves like catcher mitts. Anybody can catch the ball. In those days we had hands. We'd stick them on them. We'd put this glue on our hands and put it down on our socks down here in case we needed to rub it on it. In fact, one game, Fred catches the touchdown. He's going to throw it up into the stands. He throws it, and it goes about 5 feet because it won't get out of his hand. So that was our catcher mitts that they use right now.
Well, they banned it between him and Lester, the two of them together.
Oh yeah, they banned it after that. Yeah. It's amazing now to see some of the catches these kids make, and the catches that we could have made had we had those gloves. So it's really, that's how it's evolved. It's a wonder they don't ban these catches. There's to see to stick them on his wrap over there on an ankle wrap. That's where the stickum was, and not on your hands right here.
Yep. He just reached down and touched a sock, wouldn't he? Vincent, go ahead. I'm interrupting you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Moving on for your career with the Raiders, I got so much respect for you, what y'all did in Tampa Bay. So some people from my hometown knew that you was going to be on the show today, and they want me to ask you about the young man out of Zachary, Louisiana, why y'all took Doug Williams. And then I got some people in Mississippi want you to talk about Jimmy Giles, the young man out of Alcorn State. Then the Boomer Sooners, the Salmon brothers, Leroy and Dewey. And then the young man Gordon Jones. And then another Boomer Sooner, Greg Roberts. Talk about those players.
Okay, right? Let's start with the Selman brothers. I came in after they were drafted. Ron drafted those guys, so those were his drafts. Now I came in, and Jimmy. After that, we went 0-26. That was our record, 0-26. Eventually, Ron got fired, and I was doing what Ron was doing. So now I got to get this team. It's a bad team, and we're not winning. So I start. We have the first pick in the draft. First pick in the draft. They have a guy named Earl Campbell. Earl Campbell.
Heard of him? Yep, I know.
So we don't need Earl Campbell. We have Ricky Bell.
Yep.
I didn't think Ricky Bell was any good. I think we need Earl Campbell. But the coach says, "Hey, listen. Well, I don't want Campbell here. See what you can do." So I come up with the trade. A trade is this. I'm going to get Campbell to Houston. Now they're trying to trade me some stiff tight end. I know there's a tight end sitting there. That tight end's named Jimmy Giles. So now I really don't know Jimmy. I never met him. I wouldn't know what kind of person he is. So I go down to Houston, and Tom Williams, he used to be a black general manager with the Houston Oilers. I knew Tom, and he ran a big restaurant. And he trained players. So I asked him, "You trained Jimmy Giles?" "Yeah, I trained Jimmy Giles." I said, "I need a favor. I want to watch him work out. I want to meet him, but I don't want him to know who I am." "Oh, no problem." So I watch Jimmy work out. I give him time. I meet him at the restaurant, introduce myself to, it's Ken here. You don't know who the hell I am. Just glad to meet you. I'm a fan of yours, man. I really think a lot of you. What do you think of the guy? I started asking him questions around about just to find out things about him. So anyway, we make the trade. Jimmy's brought in. Jimmy sees me. He said, "Hey, Mister here, I know you." I said, "Hey, you don't know me. just don't say anything, Jimmy, because I'd have been banned out of the league." So now we also get the draft Doug Williams. Now Doug Williams was a terrific draft pick for me, but it was a tough draft pick. It's the first black quarterback in the first round. First black quarterback in the first round, going to a southern city. When I was talking about him, and Coach McKay had come into my office and said, "Ken, I don't want you talking anymore about this quarterback." I said, "Well, what's the matter?" He said, I had one of them in SC. I'm thinking, "Had one of them? What do you mean I had one of them?" "I had Jimmy Jones." And he said, "He tore my team apart." "Oh, okay." So I'm thinking, here's one of my best players in his draft, and he's telling me, knock it off. So after the season's over, I had a guy on our staff named Joe Gibbs. So I knew Joe had the attention of McKay more than I did. So I sent Joe down to Grambling. "Joe, I want you to spend a week in Grambling. I want you to go to class. I want you to go to dinner. I want you to get up in the morning with him. Don't sleep in the same bed, but I want you to be there with him. I want you to know everything about this guy. Come back and tell me what you think." He comes back First thing he said, this is the guy.
Wow.
This is the guy. So we were able to convince him. Okay, boom, we brought him in. He goes on. He takes us to the NFC Championship game.
Yep.
I'm going from 0-26 to the NFC Championship game in a couple of the year because of that big trade plus some other guys that we brought in and talent and stuff. Greg Roberts out of Oklahoma, all-pro guard. Going on to other players that we brought in that were, just outstanding players, receivers, and James Wilder, brought in James Wilder. These are guys that took us to the playoffs and got us into the NFC Championship. And then what happened my next year, we're trying to sign Doug, and we're all meeting. I'm meeting with Mr. Culverhouse, John McKay, and a guy named Phil Kruger. We're in the room, and we're trying to sign Doug. Just got off the phone with him. He said he wouldn't accept the contract. Doug didn't have an agent. If he did, we didn't deal with the agent. We dealt with Doug. So he says, Coach McKay says, well, we got to find out. We got who's going to be our quarterback. You got to sign. So Mr. Culver, I said, well, give him one more offer. See if he takes it. Adds a couple $1,000 to the offer. Big deal. So he tells Doug, he says, listen, we're going to give you an extra $1,000. Would you take this contract? He said, no. He said, okay. We hung up the phone. McKay says, listen, I had the Cincinnati's trying to trade the throwing Samoan, Jack Thompson. I had him in an all-star game. We need to get him. I said, Coach, I didn't think. He said, I had him. He can play. Mr. Colorado says, well, Ken, if Coach wants him, you go get him. So I go make the trade. I get Jack Thompson in there, give up a first-round pick, throw him Samoan. In the meantime, I know Jack Thompson's not any good. So I go to 49ers. I trade for Steve DeBerg, get him Steve DeBerg. And I know it. For the future, I need a quarterback here. I draft Steve Young in the USFL draft.
Yep.
When I was done, I said, that's it. I had an offer from the USFL. Howard Schnellenberger called me, offered me a lot of money. I thought about it, and I says, well, damn it, this ain't going. I'm not going to stay here. They did with this trade that they did with me getting rid of Doug. I'm not for this. So I left. I went to the USFL and back. Then I wound up eventually back in Oakland and then back in Atlanta. So that was the turnaround with that trade. That one trade. But everybody thinks of Earl Campbell, Hall of Fame. But Doug Williams should be in some Hall of Fame somewhere besides Grambling or the Black College Hall of Fame. He should be in a National Football Hall of Fame.
Well, you mentioned Joe Gibbs. Joe was impressed enough to bring him in after.
Oh yeah, Joe had him. Yes.
How'd that work for him in Washington? You know what I mean? Gosh,
Super Bowl. You're right. Super Bowl. Exactly. That's why Doug was overlooked for a couple of years because he went to the USFL. Had he stayed in the National Football, he stayed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, would have been in playoff games again.
Yeah.
Would have been in playoff games. Because after I left, they didn't touch a playoff game for about 15, 20 years.
Now I got one more player I'm gonna bring up.
Yeah.
And this comes from the Pig Sioux Nation at the University of Arkansas, calling the Hogs. They want me to ask you, what type of player was Jerry Eckwood?
Jerry Eckwood, I was fortunate. That was part of that trade, by the way. With the third-round pick. It was the third-round pick that I got from them. Jerry Eckwood, I thought was better than our running backs. Ricky Bell. He was, but it was McKay's favorite to play Ricky Bell over Eckwood. But when Eckwood got in the game, making big plays. Eckwood was a part of our playoff runs that we had when we were in Tampa Bay. Great player, great athlete. I thought the world of him. In fact, this day I still don't know where Jerry is right now, but it was a good man. He really did a lot for us.
Pig Soy, back to you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Hey Ken, I don't want to bring up anything controversial, but I do want to mention with John coming from SC and his loyalty to guys like Mike Ray and the Batman Richard Wood, and you mentioned Ricky Bell and all that. Was it hard for you to fight, or you and Ron both, to kind of appease him, knowing full well that he wanted this specific lineup, but it wasn't working. You lost your first 26 games.
Yeah. See, where I knew it wasn't going to work was, and this was with Ron too. My best player coming out was Tony Dorsett that year. Tony Dorsett. I'm talking Tony Dorsett up. So I get from Ron, says, hey, listen, cut the Tony Dorsett stuff up because we're drafting Ricky Bell. I said, well, I did. He ain't even close. He said, that's the way it is. Coach wants Ricky Bell. That's what we're going with. That was tough for me to accept. That's why eventually I said, after the Doug Williams thing, the things that I had to do to appease the coach, I said, that's enough of it. I'm not getting the player I want to develop this team for you. You're getting the player for me to maybe cause us to fail.
And John, for guys that I know that played for him at SC, Clay Matthews being one of them, no disrespect to Coach McKay, it's just it was his way or the highway. And
exactly.
sometimes that didn't always work out very well, especially at the pro game. You can't win at the pro game with your specific SC guys, even though they won for you in college. It's a different game, and you got bigger, better, faster, more talent.
We were running the I formation when he came in, running the old USC specials until Joe Gibbs came along. And that's how we got to the playoffs, you see, was Joe Gibbs running his offense. But I can remember sitting with Mr. Culverhouse, and it was after the New York Giant game, and Joe called the play against the Giants. It was 3rd and 7 or 8, and McKay and we were ahead in the game by 4 points, and so this was playoff time at the time, and so Joe calls a play for the tight end to come on cross on the 3rd down, calls a pass play instead of a running play. All McKay wanted to do is run it, get a couple yards, punt. We'll run out the time. Well, Joe calls a pass. Tight end coming across. Jim Obradovich. Sure-handed guy. Hits him right in the hand, drops the ball. But he doesn't drop it to the ground. Their linebacker, Harry Carson, picks it up, runs it down to about the 4-yard line. They score a touchdown. We lose the game. Next week, I'm sitting up in the booth with Mr. Culverhouse. He says, Ken, I don't know what we're going to do. This guy just can't call a good game, Joe Gibbs. He says, we're going to have to move on from him. He said, McKay wants to start calling the plays again. I said, well, let me tell you what. That play in New York was not the fault of Joe Gibbs. That's the fault of the player. I put it all on the player. That should have been a catch, and the game was over. But that he already got into McKay already got into Culverhouse's ear at that play. I'm getting Gibbs out of here. And Gibbs left after that year.
Yeah. Wow.
Lost a great coach.
His origination.
I thought he was going to be our next head coach eventually.
Yeah. Well, he was young when he got the job in Washington, and Frank Don Warren and Donnie owes his career to him because he was basically the extra quote lineman that you would bring in, even though he was a tight end. He was the Lawrence Taylor blocker. Yeah, I need somebody else. I need a chip to keep Lawrence Taylor from sacking my quarterback all the time. You know, his innovation. He used his offense at Colorado State.
Joe was a great coach, but he also had a great personnel guy, Bobby Beathard.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Brought in a lot of great players for him, and that's accumulated players. Listen here, you got to have players to win. That's how simple it is. And the better teams have the better evaluators. That's the way I look at it.
Well, you also need a lot of guys that know their role. They're scrappy. They know that if it wasn't
that's all scouting. That's all part of scouting, Harper. When you're bringing in guys, you have to know how to fit them in, and then the coaches have to fit them in. But I've seen where you bring in a player who doesn't fit in, boom, he goes somewhere else and fits in. I've had that so many times. I was in Tampa. I was in Atlanta. I had guys there I had a guy, Lincoln Kennedy, 1st round pick. Brought him in, 350-pound guy at those days. He was huge.
Enormous.
Started him at left guard. Boom, next year he's going to be my right tackle. I have Mike Kent at left tackle, who should be in a Pro Hall of Fame too, and Lincoln at the right side. Well, Lincoln, after his first year, he comes back. He's a 400-pounder.
407.
So we send him. So he send him to the fat farm, to Duke University. Everybody that was overweight would send them there. They'd send them there for 6 weeks to trim them down. And then by the end of the season, they were back up again. But Lincoln, send them there. He'd come back. June would find him just about every damn week because he was so heavy. And finally, June didn't want him anymore. He said, I don't want him around here. I wind up trading him to the Raiders. Pro Bowl.
Yep.
There it goes.
They love him there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he loved him there. Yeah, he's still there.
Yeah.
Doing radio work.
Yep, he's calling games for him. Yep,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I've read on numerous occasions. Now, I had to play against him, with him as a teammate, and number 1 pick overall is Andre Bruce. Talk a little bit about Andre.
My first year in Atlanta, and so I don't have the authority to make a pick. I was brought in under the auspices of the coach. And so my best player that year from scouting is Tim Brown.
Heisman Trophy. Yep, kind of worked out.
Our coach was defense.
Touchdown, Jesus.
Wanted defense. So come up with Andre Bruce. So I liked him. I got to admit, I liked him, but not where we were going to take him. But I liked him. And he was a great hell of a player in college. Now, let me tell you what, this guy can play.
Yeah.
He got to us. Andre didn't train, didn't work at it, didn't study, didn't know the game. In college, he can make a mistake, recover, make a play. In the pros, he makes a mistake, he can't recover, make the play. So after 4 years, then Jerry came in and really hated him. In fact, he tried him as a tight end, if you remember Harper. Tried him as a tight end for a little while, and that experiment went off. And so we didn't re-sign him after 4 years. So he went on to the Raiders, played 6-7 years out there as a backup, and got 10 years into the league, and never was worth what he picked. I wish that in fact I sent the head coach and I sent the receiver coach up to Notre Dame. I said, I want you guys to look at this guy first before we make this decision. So he go up there and said, Ken, you're right. He's a great player, a great player. I said, okay, well, we're still going defense. That's it. So that's the end of it.
You have to pull your hair out.
After marrying with the next year, I was in control. Okay, now Deion Sanders is coming out. I had a defensive back coach on our team. Didn't want to draft him. I don't need him. We play cover 2. We play zone. We don't need him. I said, you don't need him? This is one of the best players I've ever seen in college. And I've been doing this for a while now. This is the best player one of the best players I've ever scouted. And so the meeting goes on. They're talking about they don't want him. I walk out of the goddamn meeting. I'm sitting in my room. I said, this is it. This is it. I walked back in. I said, this is it. We're drafting this guy. And that was it. We drafted him.
Hey, Ken.
He's a great player.
Ken, was that number 3 or number 6 overall? I think
number 5.
Number 5. Okay.
Yeah.
So if he was on the board, you were going to take him, right?
If he was on the board, yeah. Well, see, we were going down. There was another Sanders, Barry Sanders.
Yes.
There was a quarterback.
Aikman.
Yeah, yep. And there was one more the other guy.
Tony Mandrich.
Huh?
Tony Mandrich.
Tony Mandrich. Now I sent my offensive line coach up there. He wants Mandrich. And I'm looking at Mandrich, and he doesn't play as good. But man, if you watch the tape on his workout, it was like the Hulk.
Yep.
He was so steroided up. He ran 4.6, 300 pounds. He said, Ken, this is a start. This is a Pro Bowl player. Jim Hannafin, great offensive line coach. I got to listen. But my fear was, I'm going to have to take that line coach. If it's Deion and him, I want Deion. But they're wanting the lineman. So Taylor, fortunately, knew the general manager in Green Bay, Tom Brock, who was with him in Atlanta. So he was talking to him, and he said, Ken, you don't have to worry about Mandrich. He's going to Green Bay. I said, you sure of that? He said, yeah. I said, good. We're getting one of the Sanders.
Wow.
But I knew we weren't getting Barry because I was at the Barry Sanders workout. Barry runs 4.4, jumped like 41 inches. And there's Wayne Fonts, who I had in when I knew very well from all my days in with the Buccaneers. After he runs that 4.4 and jumps, he says, you ain't getting them, because he was drafting ahead of us. So I knew I wasn't going to get him. I knew when it came down to it, it was going to be Sanders. And so it fell right that way.
Yeah. Dion's workout at the combine was
4.27. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And then we tell you what, Harp, he was playing baseball and never trained. Had he trained, he would be running in a 4.1 something.
Yeah.
4.15, 4.17.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how fast he was.
Well, and he and Steinbrenner had a little deal. He was playing all summer, right? He was with the Yankees. And what was your concern about that, at least with baseball? Because by the time I get to Atlanta, there's helicopters coming to pick him up at practice to fly him down to Fulton County to play in the game. And
that's right.
What an amazing part of history there.
Well, just think of this. We sign him on a Monday. That Sunday, he was in Seattle. He had a home run. So he didn't practice Tuesday. We practiced Wednesday, Thursday. We play the game on Sunday. Catches a punt for a touchdown.
Yeah.
That's Deion Sanders. So natural. He didn't practice a bit in coverage. He'd line up against anybody and cover him. It takes a while for a corner to get accustomed to movement and everything. This guy automatically bang. Was such an instant athlete, and the greatest athlete. I was around one other one with the Raiders, Bo Jackson, and somebody always told me, who would you have, Bo Jackson or Deion Sanders? Because I drafted Deion. I always sided with Deion because I knew Deion could play offense or defense.
Yep.
Bo Jackson could only play offense. So I knew that this was how great of an athlete I had, probably the premier athlete. And they can talk about all these new guys coming in. These guys are playing right now. They're all good. There's a lot of good players, good cover guys. This is the best. This is numero uno of defensive corners. There's not another one that's better than him.
Yeah,
that's me. Old school, young school, whatever it is. That's my guy.
Tell it.
You had another baseball player. We had Brian Jordan.
Brian Jordan. Now, hey, listen, I was probably the only guy who ever had two baseball players that played football. Brian was on a cusp of being a Pro Bowl player.
Yeah.
I picked him up off of waivers, because I liked him in college.
In Buffalo, right? He was in Buffalo.
Right. He went to Richmond, and my son eventually went to Richmond. The coach who recruited him, I hired him as a scout. The coach who was at Richmond, I hired him as a scout, Bill Baker. And I always liked Brian. Never did get to draft him, but I always kept my eye on him. When he was on waivers, man, I plucked him right away. Started right away. He was an alternate to the Pro Bowl that year, but the Cardinals knew, hey, listen, if we're going to sign this guy, it's going to be big money. The money went big, and we couldn't get him.
Yeah, it was a tough deal, but hopefully Case or maybe Tim McKay or one of those guys would play a little baseball for you too to keep it going. But
let's see. That was the thing. We had Case. I liked Case as a player. I thought Case was a safety. We're playing in the corner, and our secondary coach loved Case as the corner. And that's when he's telling me, we don't need Deion. I got Case. That was my case.
Well, I get here in 91. The Falcons went in 90 with Jerry's first couple of games preseason, 5-0. He played all the starters and all that. And then what was it? A 7, 8, 9 game losing streak that the Falcons had.
Yeah.
I was in Philadelphia at the time, and so we played the Falcons in Fulton County. And at the end of the game, my dad was able to attend, and I'm outside the stadium, and some guy walks up to me and goes, "Hey, do you play for the Eagles?" I said, "I do." He goes, "What's wrong with the Falcons?" And I said, well, I'll tell you what, they were beating us up until the last 2 minutes of the ball game. They don't know how to win yet. They just don't know how to win yet. They've got a great lineup there. I mean, Freilich, Ken, Chris Hinton, who you brought in.
Yeah, I brought in Chris. Yeah, another Pro Bowler.
3 Pro Bowlers. Jamie Dukes, who had arms were from here.
Well, I had a great offense. I got a good offensive line here for him. There's no doubt about it. That was a quality offensive line.
I agree.
He lined up all those guys. That was an elite offensive line.
Yeah, you kept Reggie White and Jerome Brown from hitting Chris Miller, right?
Yes. In fact, I tried to sign Reggie White. I thought we were going to get him. Brought him in for the visit, from the USFL. He's coming to our place. Man, we take him down to the downtown Atlanta. He meets with the Senate and the House of Representatives down there. They're giving him we want you here. We're all this stuff. He winds up going to Green Bay. He says, God sent him to Green Bay. God, we trust him to Green Bay. That's how he wound up going to Green Bay. Ron Wolf outbidded me on him.
Yeah.
Love it.
You see, that was my partner. He outbidded me.
Yep. What are those conversations like now with Ron when you get together?
We laugh about all those things because he loved Brett Favre, and I love Brett Favre.
Yeah.
We're going into the Brett Favre draft. And so I have Brett as a high first-round pick. I love the guy. So comes to draft, we don't really need the quarter. We have Chris Miller, by the way. We have Chris. He's a Pro Bowl player. He's a good player. And so but I still want Brett. I see that what I see in Brett. I can see what I see in Brett. Because I watched him against Georgia. The guy just come off of a stomach surgery, and he almost beats Georgia. They lose by a field goal. I go see him play in an all-star game, and the guy I just think he had it all. So I even take June. June goes down. We go to work him out. We'll work out him. Worked out some other quarterbacks. Anyway, we're going into the draft, and day of the draft. It's our turn to draft. I'm all set. First of all, I'm trying to trade up. I'm trying to trade up into the first round to go get him. And I couldn't get a trade done. But we're sitting there in front of Wolf. He was at the Jets as a director at that time. I'm sitting in front of him. And he couldn't get up either. So we're both trying to get up. So finally it comes down, because the owner finally says, Ken, settle down. We have a quarterback. I said, oh, it's a great one. Settle down. So I go to draft. It's time to draft now. It's our turn. There's our guy, Brett Favre. I said there, man, guys, here's the guy. I said, Jerry, what do you think? He says, I like Browning Nagel better. What? I'm thinking, I didn't know what to say. I got 15 minutes on the clock. I'm stunned. I want to appease the coaches. I want the coaches to get the players, because if you don't bring the right player, they're going to disown them. They're going to show you were wrong. So you got to be kidding me. So I said, okay, hey June, you worked out Nagel with me. You worked out Brett. What do you think? Well, Ken, Browning can do this. Brett could do this. These guys, they have their strong points and weak points. I said, okay. I'm thinking, you ain't telling me anything. Sit down. So I got about 5 minutes to go, and I'm just sitting there. The clock's ticking, and everybody's just sitting. What's he going to do? So I finally stood up with 2 minutes ago. I said, turn in Brett Favre. Jerry turned blue. He was so pissed off that I took that guy instead of Browning Nagel. He never gave that kid a chance. I don't know if you were around him when he was there. He never got a chance.
Yep.
Became a team clown.
Mississippi. He didn't call him
always
Brett.
Drunk, missing meetings, couldn't run. I'd go on the road for a couple of days, come back, and it was, again, your boy. What about my boy, Brett? He couldn't even run scout team this week. He misses meetings. So I said, holy Christ, I really blew this one, man. I'm really looking like a clown with this pick. So in the meantime, I know Ron Wolf always liked him because he saw him play. We played in Seattle. Remember, we had a preseason game. I mean, a scrimmage game in Seattle.
Yeah.
We flew all the way out there for a scrimmage game. No, it was Portland. Wasn't it Portland?
It was Portland. Yeah.
It was Portland, Malt Stadium. We flew there. He has a great practice. He really does a good job against the Seattle Seahawks. And Wolf was there. Wolf always liked him. So now after the season's over, we have an evaluation. All right, the first evaluation comes down to Brett. What are we going to do with this guy? I have a meeting with Taylor, June, Jerry, and myself. I said, okay, guys, you two guys tell Taylor what you think of Brett Favre. Jesus Christ, after you're done, you think he's a reject. And I said, well, obviously I must be wrong. I said, there's sometimes I'm not always perfect. I said, so obviously in this case, maybe I made a mistake. But I'll tell you what, I will get you a first-round pick for him. Jerry went, you get him a first-round pick? You're a genius. Well, I got a first-round pick. And he went on to be a Hall of Fame player, and I lost him.
Yeah.
Brett was about 240, and we were playing in Los Angeles.
Oh, my God.
And he and Billy Joe Tolliver had a bet right after warm-ups. We were just getting ready to go in to the locker room before the game, and Billy says, "Hey, Freck, or hey, Mississippi, or Brett, I bet you can't throw a football into the upper deck of that."
I was there. I saw it.
Well, now my understanding is that Wolfman
was in L.A.
Wolfman was on the phone and didn't watch Brett warm up, but he saw that one throw that Brett threw it up. And he goes, "That's all I need to see. The kid has a strong arm."
No, I know what he did. He came to one of our games, and it was right when they were dissatisfied with him, and I knew he liked him. So I told him, I said, "Ron, if you really like this guy, you need to come to this game and see him in pregame because you won't ever see him again." So he came, watched him again in pregame, and watched him very closely. And he knew him. He knew all about him, though. He knew what he was. And in fact, when we drafted him, he had a hip problem that said he would only play 5 to 7 years. I still took the chance.
Yeah.
But we sent him to Green Bay. The trainers fail him. Wolf says, "No, he didn't fail the physical. He's fine. I'm passing him. You guys fail him. I pass him." He passed the physical. And so, it went on from there to be what he is. But the stories about Brett, I heard those Brett stories. It used to get me sick because it was always, man, that's making me look bad.
Well, first time I ever talked to him, he was in the weight room. This is before a training camp practice. So we're doing two-a-days, and he's wearing one of these Schimmel shirts. It's cut off at the torso, at the rib cage. And he's leaning back doing a hurdler stretch. And he's got this scar in his stomach that looked kind of fresh, if you know what I mean. I mean, you can tell the difference. And it was still really pink. And I said, "Doggone, Brett, what happened there?" He goes, "Oh, I was in a little bit of a wreck." I go, "What happened?" I didn't know anything about it. He goes,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah." I mean, right before his senior year, he told me he lost 27 inches of his large intestine. What?
And I tell you, that's I watched him play the first game against Georgia after that surgery, thinking he's never going to be able to play. Here's a guy, in fact, he's emaciated. God, he must have been 190 pounds by then. That time. He's thin, skinny as hell. He came out there, but you knew he had the rocket. And he leads them to a victory, sets them up for the field goal. They miss it, and they lost the game. And that's when I knew. I said, "This is one tough son of a gun."
Yeah.
This guy with his arm, the toughness he has. This is a no-fit. This is a Pro Bowl player. Did I think Hall of Fame yet at that time? I knew Pro Bowl. I didn't say Hall of Fame. I knew Pro Bowl. I knew he could be a Pro Bowl player. He knew I knew what he had.
Well,
he could go on after that, but after we got him, he used to come to me every time I see him in the locker room or see him somewhere. "Mr. Herock, I'm better than all these guys you got here. I'm better than all. When am I going to get my chance to play?" I said, "Brett, when you get your chance to play, just show them what you can do. That's all I can tell you. I mean, right now we got
Chris Miller.
We got Chris Miller. I said
Wade Wilson. And then Billy Joe Tolliver. We had four quarterbacks.
Billy Joe. In fact, we're going into our opening of the season, and Jerry's not happy with Wilson. he says, and he didn't touch Brett, because he knew it was my guy. Wouldn't say nothing. So we need a third quarterback. He said, you got anybody? I said, well, yeah, I'm talking to San Diego. They got Billy Joe Tolliver. June liked him. I says, I can get him. We'll bring him in here. So I make a trade, bring in Billy Joe. Thinking Billy Joe's the third quarterback. Brett's number 2. I bring Billy Joe here. He comes on a Tuesday. Going into Sunday's game, I noticed Brett's the third quarterback. I said, how the hell could he beat him out in 3 days? And that's when I knew there's no hope for Brett.
Yeah.
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 And Billy Joe won a game against 49ers, Hail Mary.
The Hail Mary at the because
yeah.
Chris's arm wasn't strong enough. Billy could throw it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the second. No, was it the last game in Fulton County?
It was the last game. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Right down the right sideline. Still
Yep.
see the ball. Hail Mary.
Well, in that game, I was hurt and I had broken my navicular bone. And there's this guy, whitest hair you've ever seen, and these lamb chop Elvis type sideburns, standing on the pitcher's mound. And it was covered, but because the Braves were really good that year.
Yeah.
And so I walk up to Whitey Zimmerman, our equipment manager, and go, Whitey, who's that guy with the hair standing on the pitcher's mound? He goes, oh, hell, I don't know. I go over to Jerry Ray. I go, hey, Jerry, who's that guy over there on the pitcher's mound? He goes, gosh, I recognize him, but I don't know who it is. I can't think. I don't know. And I'm busy. I got a game. He didn't know. So I asked a couple of the players. I eventually walk up to Billy Joe Tolliver. I go, Billy, that guy that's standing on the pitcher's mound there with it. He goes, good Lord, son, that's George Jones, the father of country.
That's one thing about Jerry. Jerry always brought in great entertainment.
He loved
the music guy.
Yes.
Somebody in, music playing, roaring. But that's the first time that when I was with the Raiders, we didn't have all that noise in the locker room. Anywhere I've been in a locker room was always quiet, reserved. Jerry opened it up, and I accepted it because of Dion, because it was Dion's idea first. It wasn't Jerry; it was Dion's, and he opened it up, and Jerry went with it, and they carried it on. That was a big thing in our locker room where we had the rappers, we had everybody going in there.
I still got a picture in my house somewhere. Vander Holyfield is got his arm around me and he's ready.
Oh, I got one too. I got one on the field with him too.
Yeah. Well,
That's
that
good.
was one of the, I've always put it this way, Ken. A lot of music or folks that are actors, they love to play in front of a crowd, right? And obviously, movie and television actors, they don't get a crowd. But the ones that are doing plays, like in New York, they love the audience response. There's a really cool thing about that. And most musicians, like George Jones or Bonnie Raitt or John Mellencamp, who he was friends with, that would come. I remember helping James Brown.
I remember that one. Listen,
remember when James came
in? He's coming in, and I mean, he was a little tiny little thing.
He's a little bit bigger than a postage stamp.
We're bringing him on a field. And so we get him a pair of football shoes. So he sits down on a chair and he puts his feet up, and he's got a guy putting his shoes on. Yeah. He didn't even put his own shoes on. We get him out on the field, have him run a play, and that was really pretty cool. Get to meet him, get to see him, sitting down there with him, a guy putting his shoes on.
Yeah. I mean, just some of the goofy stuff. But I remember telling him in the huddle, hey, Mr. Brown, you're coming up. He didn't know what to do. All he did was we ran a play. And Vincent,
right. I know
we stopped practice for James Brown. and I said, Mr. Brown, just you see where I'll be on the right side. Follow me. And Jesse Tuggle on purpose went right next to him and was ready to drive, and then he falls down. And James ends up running about 20 yards down the field and gets in the end zone for a touchdown. And he got to keep the ball too. So good for him.
You mentioned Jesse Tuggle. There's a great one right there. Now we drafted Andre Bruce. Now in the meantime, there's this little linebacker down at Valdosta State. There's a coach down there. I knew the coach. He was at Georgia, and they had this linebacker down there, 5'10-ish. 230. He could run. Jesse could run 4.5.
Yeah.
And I don't want those. I want 6'5". I want Andre Bruce type guys. I'm a Raider. I don't want no small guy there. But the coach convinced me. We sign him. I'm thinking we sign him. We'll be here a couple of weeks, cut him, get him the hell out of here. Well, it goes on. The story goes on. Andre Bruce is gone after 4. This guy plays for 12. He's in 7 Pro Bowls, leading tackler every year. Just a great player.
Yep. You had Marcus Cotton on one side, and Andre Bruce.
But that was the mistake. Marcus Cotton was the mistake for Andre Bruce. Cotton was smart and run the streets. Took Andre with him. Andre couldn't keep up. As a result, both of them failed.
But I got one other player that someone wanted me to ask you about. The young man from Jackson State, Darren Connor.
Oh my God, what a good player he was! A shame what happened to him in his career, because he was a legitimate Pro Bowl player, I thought so right away, and just got caught into drinking and some bad habits, and eventually out of the league, and you know the life story.
What about Houston Hoover?
I love Houston. Another one of my finds down in what I call the historic black college universities. one of my finds, Houston. Loved him right away. As soon as he came in, you know right away when you get him, this is a player, man. You know right away. And knew right away he's going to be a player, and he went on to play out a great career with us. Like I said, had good offensive lineman, Houston Hoover. I mean, to fit him in with that group coming out of Jackson State, I mean, that's something. I remember going to Jackson State in my early years. They had a little running back out of there, Walter Payton. And so they had a real tough coach, man. He was a mean coach.
Bob Hill.
You got him. Bob Hill, mean, nasty guy with the players. And so I'm at practice one. I'll give you some like that. I'm at practice. And they had a defensive drill, offensive guy blocking a defensive guy. So the defense, he says, all right, you guys, 1-on-1. And then he beat him. He said, all right, 2-on-1. Get 2-on-1. He says, I want you guys to beat this shit out of this guy over here. When he's down, I want you kicking him and punching him. I'm like, what? And then I see this running back, this great running back, Walter Payton. He's making them do push-ups, jumping jacks when he makes a mistake, run a lap. I'm going, holy cow, this is the star. That was Bob Hill. In fact, Bob Hill was playing Marino Castle. They're playing a big game. And they said that there's going to be a fight before the game. Castle and Hill. Well, they settled it down. They kept it out. But that's the way Bob was. Bob was a tough, but he produced a lot of players. I can remember what happened one game. He's in there. He had kicked the player off the team. But that player came to practice. Now, at Jackson State, when you went to practice, you had to walk across half the campus to get to Jackson State practice field. So the kid comes off all the way to practice. He's going to want to practice. Hill said, I told you you're off the team. Get out of here. Kid turns around and says, and drop that equipment here right now.
Yeah.
Kid ran back in his underwear.
No,
I saw I was there. It's not a make-up story. I saw it. He said, take off the pads. Take off that shirt. Go in your undies. Get out of here.
So were you close to Coach Castleman?
What's that?
Was you close to Marino Castle?
Well, yeah, I knew Marino very well. Yes, yeah.
I'm gonna tell you.
So one thing I did when I was scouting in those days, you got to remember, most of the black colleges, where were they? East of the Mississippi, until you got to Texas. And I did the Louisiana schools, Grambling. I had all those. So I knew all those guys. I mean, I was going down to Alcorn, driving down at the Natchez Trace.
Yes, sir.
And I'll tell you what, if you were a black scout, you better get out of there before it got dark. Those policemen on there, those troopers, they'd pick you up and stop you and give you a ticket. So I've been to those schools, and I saw how tough they were. I can remember Marino Castle one day watching he chases a guy, says, get over on that sled and drive it up the field. You have to drive one of those, those one-man sleds you hit. You had to hit it. You had to drive it the whole length of a football field. And then I saw him carrying a stick, hitting guys with a stick on a field. And that's just some days when you could do stuff like that. but that was a lot of great players. A lot of great players come out of those schools. I can remember going to Tennessee State. I went down there, and there's more first-round picks down there than you can shake a stick at my first year. I thought maybe I was missing something. These can't all be this good.
What year were you down there?
1970. Too Tall Jones.
Mike Heckman.
Yeah, you got there. A lot of great players. Offensive lineman went to Cincinnati in the first round. Can't think of his name right now. A lot of great players. And that was always a good call. That was a great. He has great coaching down there. They did. They and I'll tell you what. When I asked the coach, I come in, I said, Coach, what time you practice? Which one you talking about? I said, well, practice after practice. He said, well, before we practice 3 a days before we start the season. After that, we go 2 a days. I said, wait a minute, 2 a days? He said, yeah. We come back. I send them home to dinner. They come back. We practice again. I said, what do you do that for? Keep them off the streets. They're too tired. They got to go to bed. Keep them out of trouble. I experienced all those. There he is, man. Too tall. He was a great player. Great. You wouldn't believe it, guys like that coming out of Tennessee State. Yeah. I mean, I used to go to Vanderbilt. I'd take the film because they didn't have stuff over at Tennessee State to watch it. I'd go to Vanderbilt to watch it.
Oh, wow.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Well, reason I brought up Coach Castleman, true story. He's from Memphis. Went to Father Burton High School.
Okay.
And it was a house right across the street from Father Burton. That's the house I grew up in.
Oh my goodness.
And then Coach Castleman, I graduated in high school in '78. The following year, he signed 5 players out of my high school, Southside High School. Lawrence King, the Cole brothers. One of the brothers ended up being all SWAC for like 4 straight years, Robert Cole.
Oh, I remember Robert Cole. I remember that name now. Yeah, linebacker?
Yep. He
Yep,
was all
I remember
SWAC 4 years. He didn't get drafted, though.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
And then they had a kid named Mark Harper. They ended up playing in Cleveland. Was a quarterback at Northside High School. But one thing that you brought up, how rough those practices were. Lawrence King was one of my best friends. He went down there in '79. They took a scholarship the same year because he couldn't cover man to man, because back then the SWAC, they didn't play cover.
Oh, they played man to man.
Man to man all over.
I got you. You got him.
Yes, sir. Back to you, Harper.
Ken, when I met Gil Brandt a few years ago, he remembered some things that I didn't even know about me, and it was pretty interesting. There's almost a photographic memory. There's so many players, and you got to kind of put them in a silo or a category. Who are some of the guys that you really respected? We've talked about Ron Wolf quite a bit and Gil, but who are some of the other guys that you go, man, this guy, he knows what he's doing, and he is going to help the league with whatever team that he's working for, because he just gets it.
Gil was an innovator in the computer area. He's the one who got the computers into pro football, and that was his innovation. That's how they're gathering information. They gathered it so much more than what everybody else was doing. So
what are tendencies on third down, right, Ken? They do man coverage 82% of the time, and they do zone 16%. That's the computer that I'm thinking of, is they would break down tendencies in a way
that's a different aspect. That's the coaching part. The personnel part was they were going out and getting more information on personnel, doing different testings. They started some of the testings. They were the ones bringing up the vertical jump, the broad jumps, and those came all of a sudden measurements for us. And he was the innovator in there, and putting it all into a computer where they were able to read it faster than us going through page by page. You see, in fact, I can tell you this: when I got to Tampa Bay. Mr. Culverhouse one day comes into my office and says, Ken, you know anything about computers? I said, nah, not really. Well, I got a guy, he wants to help us with some computers. And so he brings them in. I said, I'm interested. I'll look at it. So we get this guy, puts his program in for us. The program became so good, that we sold it to everybody in the league.
Hmm.
Or about half the teams in the league bought it.
Right.
And Go had his program. But we sold it and used it. And that was the start of the pro scouting in the National Football League. I say scouting from the standpoint of personnel.
Right.
Okay. And that was different things you wanted to know about. You bring them up real fast. Like right now, I mean, my son works for the Raiders. He has his home right here in Cumming. He has his office. Everything's there. It's all computerized. He don't have to be in their office. And it's easier for him. He goes out to see the top 100 guys. Top 100 guys, where are they located mostly? Down here in the South. The computer business put it all together. So we put that together. And I can remember after that, I went back to the Raiders. And so every time I left the team, I'd go back to the Raiders. Yeah. So I go to the Raiders. And now the Raiders aren't computerized. Everything's handwritten. You go into a big room. If you wanted to see anything from the Chargers, you have to open up this big bounded book, look at a page, read the report. I say, Jesus Christ, I thought we'd be upgraded by now. So I tell Al, this is after I came from Atlanta. I was really into computers then. And so I came up there. I said, Al, we're living in the Stone Ages here. He says, we got a computer. I said, I don't believe in those computers. Al, let's give it a shot. He said, what's it going to cost me? I said, it's going to cost you nothing. I got a contact with Hewlett Packard. I give them a suite. They came in and give us all the computer equipment, put it all together for us. Got the guy that started the computer program I had down in Tampa Bay, brought him in, organized it. The scouts hated it because the scouts couldn't even type. Because now you have to type a report now. It's in your computer. Yeah. You don't write it now. And so in fact, I had to get the scouts typing lessons. Here we're in training camp. The scouts are sitting at a desk. And we used to use this Miss Mabel or something like that, teaching them how to type. And I had a guy named Mickey Marvin. His fingers were so big, if you hit the A, it would cover two at a time. So he had to be real careful.
Yeah.
But they were all pissed off because I'm going to computers. But it was so much easier. And then eventually Al accepted it. We all went through that program of putting in the computers. But like I said, it was like living in the Stone Age. I couldn't believe when I come back out this. Holy cow, this hasn't changed since I was back here, but I was 1970.
Yeah.
So well, I know the college he didn't believe in changes.
No. College coaches absolutely loved it because if there's a kid and you're going to lose him, well, who else? I'm here in Mobile, Alabama. I'm looking for a tight end or a linebacker, and I can just check this list out. It's so much quicker and easier.
And bringing up all the information you need on those players.
Yeah.
I mean, I myself, I get all the information from the Raiders. I watch all the game tapes. I got every game here from every college game and everything right up to date. All the pro games, everything. I can watch it right on my units that I got here. So, but it's so easy to work. My son has everything set. Make him bring up anything, any information you have. Watch any tape. Right now, he's made all his school visits, live visits. He's now studying the tapes more on them, and that's all he does at home right now, from morning to evening. Boom, studying film right now. In fact, he's going to see Colorado play this weekend. They play Kansas. And I says, so what are you going to, he says, well, I know I have to go see Sanders finally. Because I know how much you like him, because I like Sanders in my ratings and stuff. He's got ability. He's not nowhere near the athlete Dion is, but he's got a talent better than Dion. He can throw the ball.
Well, can you lead us right into what are we doing now and pro preps? How did you get involved with that and give our audience a little bit of a view of what your role is specifically to help some of these seniors and rising juniors that want to enter the draft, and how you've been able to take advantage of a market that was really wide open for anyone, but your expertise has obviously led to a new career for you.
Yeah, when I retired, I retired when I was 59. Ron Wolf retired. He was a couple years older than me. And so I thought, who do I work? I don't want to work for anybody. I always worked for Al or worked for Ron, or I worked for myself. Now, I couldn't work for myself now because nobody hired me now as a GM. But now I said, well, I got to retire. I had enough money, and everything. So I retired, 59. I retired, and after about a month, I said, Christ, I got to do something. So I come up, I said, I always worried about bringing a guy into a meeting room and it stumble through stuff. And the coach, oh, this guy, he doesn't know this, doesn't know that. So I said, I can teach these guys to walk in that room and excel in that room. I know all the questions that will be asked. I know how to do it and how to train. So I come up with a company called Pro Prep. So I talked to a bunch of agents. I said, listen, I can help your player in the draft. Oh, you can? I said, yeah. Let me bring him into a draft room. We're into a draft meeting with the team and see how they perform. And I'll show you how I can make them better. So I did. What I do is I started off maybe with about 30 or 40 players the first year, and every one of those, everybody heard about it now. In fact, the league, some of the personnel directors will call me again. What the hell are you doing? You're bringing guys in here. I mean, they sound like they're perfect, and we can't get anything out of the meeting. That's not my fault. My job is just to train these guys. I don't care what you guys do. I'm not in the league anymore. So everybody started here. Before you know it, I was doing. I got a slow time frame. You got about 6-7 weeks to work. 7 weeks to work, and I was doing 70, 80 players. And to put in the time in the players, I got to start with them. I have an agent. You have 6 players. I have a group meeting. I introduce them to 2.5 hours of my introduction to the NFL. Everything they know to know by the time from the time they get into the NFL till they get on it. A great talk. It's an inspirational talk. And then I go to individual. I take each player individually for 2.5 hours. Start with a handshake, introduction, every question they can be asked. Look people in the eye. Everything that I would go down with every question. And then I would put them on tape to see so they could see how they perform, see if they were screwing up. Because you're going to be on video in every one of those rooms. So it turned into a good idea, and it turned into a pretty lucrative idea for me too. Working with all these players, I worked with probably over 1,700 players through the course of what I've been doing, and many first-round picks and stuff like that. So the players got a lot out of it. The kids to everyone. Oh, Mr. Herock, thank you, man. That really helped me in that meeting because they know the question. They don't have to think. There's no they get up on a board, draw up the right plays, know how to do it. They knew everything that had to be done in that meeting. They were relaxed. They could do it. Not where you're pressed. Oh God, what am I saying the right thing? Did I say the right thing? Did I screw that up? No, you were prepared. They go in prepared, and it was a big advantage to these kids. And right now I'm 83 years old, and I'm cutting back this year. I'm probably just going to do maybe 20, 25 players if I want to do that. It's time for me to move on. My wife keeps asking me, "What the hell are you doing this for?" Because at one time I had to travel, but when we got to the COVID time, that was nice because I was doing Zoom calls. I could just sit at home and do it. And so now, but after COVID's done, now I want to go travel again. But I cut that down a little bit and started sticking to the Zooms. And she's just telling me it's time for me to quit this stuff. So he's out of it probably this year.
Well, it's interesting. The advantage that I see that what you're providing is they're going to pick somebody, and they're probably going to pick you because you're better prepared. And I'm not going to overuse that word, but your ability to answer with confidence and surety, even though there's some complications that occur, no player is perfect. They're going to ask you about some of your weaknesses. And if you have the right, correct, and decisive answer, so I want you to get the job. That's basically what you're doing. I'm going to want whoever I work with, I want that guy to be the first round draft pick, not somebody else. And you help people to do that, correct?
Sure. But the thing is, you get into kids that have issues. I have to explain that issue so we can explain it to them so it's not as serious as you think it is, and that I'm sorry for what I did. It never happened again. It's not me. That was just a one time. I just go through and plead my case to them if it was an issue that had to be addressed, a drug issue, a felony,
or whatever.
or whatever it could be. And so I would make sure those issues were all handled the right way. And so the kids were at ease. And after they see it on tape and we go through it, we repeat it so many times. And then when I'm done, I put them through what I used to call a mock interview. I would have, like, I'm in a room and I would simulate you're in the Raider room. Okay. Right. The head coach, Antonio Pierce, is there. The general manager, Tom Telesco, is there. The offensive coordinator, Turner, is there. And then I simulate the room. You come into the room, you're going to meet these guys. I time you. Now it's a 17-minute meeting. 17 minutes. I turn on the clock. I start with the question. See the introduction. Where you go from the introduction to the question. Sit down. Because when you're in a room, in those meetings right now, the room is cleared out. You got one seat over there. Everybody's looking at you. You only have maybe one or two people talking to you.
Right.
How to get along with the guy that's going to be doing it. If you're an offensive guy, it's going to be an offensive line coach or coordinator, whoever's going to be interviewing you. So I make sure you know their names. You know where you're going to be meeting. So before you go in, you know their names. So You're not stunned. Yes, sir, man. Yeah, I know, man. Yes, sir, Coach Pierce. You see, so you're addressing them with respect. Oh man, this guy's really sharp. That's you're bringing on a false image, basically what it is. You really know that's sometimes that's not that player, but at that time, what you're seeing is a good player.
Yep.
He may revert back once you get him. You go, Jesus Christ, he was really good during meeting. What the hell happened? Well, it was me.
Well, you're preparing them for the Raiders or the Chiefs or the Eagles or the Falcons. It doesn't matter. No. Plus, in my opinion, Ken, you're also getting them ready for the media relationship that they're going to have throughout their career, where they're always going to be asked a question by this reporter or that reporter, and how to do it with tact and just, how to be smooth and help yourself, your brand, and the league to grow from it.
Yeah, that's it. It's so easy. So it's like I said, guys, this isn't going to be tough. I have what I used to call the high fives, what I would look for in players. And I would go through those high fives with them individually. This is what's going to make you get the job here with the Raiders or the Chiefs or whatever team it is in the NFL. It's also going to make you be able to get the job when you're done with football, or once you're done because your career's over. These things I'm teaching you right now will help you. And so I would go through my talk with them, and everyone to them. I mean, listen, when you're meeting with, say, 10 kids in a room, and I'm speaking for 2.5 hours, and they're all at attention. They're all listening. Because I tell them right away, if you don't like what the fuck I'm saying, get out of here. I'm here to make you money. If you don't like it, leave now. Because I've even addressed, I had one guy, he was the first round pick eventually. He's sitting in a meeting, he had his head down. Like I said, wait a minute. So he's like, Joe, what the hell you doing, man? You get yourself into this meeting or get the hell out of here. I confront him just like that.
Yeah.
You got to be tough with them, but you got to love them also. You got to make sure that they're getting the right, not just ripping them, you see.
Sure.
But when you do, you do it in a way that you're teaching them things. Yeah.
Well, all that stuff. Hey, give your. I know you say you're kind of peeling back a little bit, but if anybody knows somebody that would be interested in contacting you, and how would they access ProPreps?
All you do is go to kenherock.com.
Okay.
kenherock.com, and I got a website up there.
HEROCK.
HER, just KEN. To start with KEN HEROCK. No, just straight line.com.
.com. Yeah.
It's like I have a website. In fact, I'll probably be taking that down after this year, maybe.
Well, there's always somebody that says, you know what, I could use, and especially younger kids, maybe not necessarily high school age, but early, because a lot of kids, well, no, I'm going to take that back. A lot of people cite that speaking in public is their biggest fear, more than dying in some respects. You've heard those statistics before, but you just analyze what people are doing. nowadays, my kids especially, Ken, they'll use the word like in a sentence about 45 times, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like. When you learn how to be able to just control that a little bit, you sound more like you know what you're doing. You sound more, you have a better relationship with people because you're able to communicate in a way that, and you're just,
whenever you're in pro football and you're a director or you're a general manager, you have to be able to communicate.
Yep.
So I always thought I was a good communicator. I mean, I'd give my high school, I did the commencement address. West Virginia, I did the commencement address. So I was able to speak to before big crowds and people. And so, and I really thought, well, man, it's going to be tough. I got 10 guys in there. How am I going to be able to control these kids? I mean, after 15 minutes, they're going to say, I want the fuck out of here. But no, they don't. They really want to learn. They want to be the best. They want to be the best in that room. So then I discovered this is easy. They're buying right into it automatically.
Yeah.
If they're not buying into it, they're out of the room. That's simple.
Well, you're helping them get.
I'm helping you make money. That's the key. I said, I know how you can play. I want to know what you are really. I want to find out what kind of guy you are. And the questions they're asking you, I have them all here. Every question they could possibly be asked of you is here. Every question that they can ask, I know what it is. And then I also have questions that are surprise questions. Like you might find some coach come into a personnel meeting or a meeting when you're meeting with a player, and he might come up with say, "Are you a dog or a cat?"
Right.
So what are you going to say?
Yeah.
I said, I don't give a shit what you say. You want to be a dog? Say you're a dog and say why you're a dog. Because it don't mean nothing. Because if a coach is going to ask that question in my meeting, I said, hey, coach, I ain't worried about dogs or cats. I'm not about football. So that's the way I was. That's the way I approached it, you see.
Yeah.
I said, you'll get stupid questions, but don't be shocked. And I give them a list of all the stupid questions that have been asked. So they know that even. So they're not shocked when they hear something that maybe they shouldn't hear.
Is there anything about that movie Draft Day with Kevin and it kind of encapsulates all kinds of different things that might happen into one single draft, which it never works that way. But there's that humor in watching it because I knew that some of the things that they were doing in the movie had happened to either a team that I was on or other teams. What did you think of that?
I didn't watch the movie. I never watched that movie. I always thought of it. I'm not watching that kind of movie. I never watched it. I don't know anything about it. I heard about it. I never watched it. But I tell you what, I had some bad days in the draft. Drafting Brett Favre, that was a bad day for me because I drafted him against Jerry's will. Now we were drafted in Tampa Bay, so we have 2 players coming up that we're interested in picking. One was a lineman out of Penn State, and one was a defensive lineman out of Bethune-Cookman. So in those days, we had a guy in New York, and it was antiquated. He had earpieces on. You couldn't hear. There's crowds going on. And so I told him, I said, I want you to turn in one of these names. I'll let you know after we discuss this here. So we go around. The discussion was, okay, I'm going to turn in the certain player's name, Joe. And as I told him, I said, but we're not going to draft Bob. We're going to draft Joe. He thought I said we're going to draft Bob. So we wind up drafting the wrong guy. But the wrong guy turned out to be a Pro Bowl player, an offensive lineman from Penn State.
Oh.
So you go, he says that was, and when it happened, we go, holy hell, the room exploded. We drafted the wrong guy. I said, oh my, this is embarrassing. Get the commissioner on the phone. We got to get this changed. The owner calls the commissioner. We made the mistake. Too late. You made the pick.
No, we have a mulligan. We want a mulligan.
Yeah. And that was it. And what I did, I went up and traded with Chicago, got a second round pick from them, and traded for that guy that we were supposed to turn in. So we got both players. Got both players.
You got Joe and Bob for
Yeah.
and it cost you a second rounder. Well, you have to be a good communicator, Ken. You just told me that, and then now you have communication issues while you were in Tampa. How about that?
The communication issues were with the all the stuff we had here, the earphones and all that stuff. They couldn't hear back there because it was our equipment guy. We had our equipment guy was up there.
What do you know?
Pat Marchicello, and I think he's with the 49ers right now. And anyway, he thought I said one thing and said another thing. I was cursing you. I said, you dumb, you set him up there. You screwed the hell you do. I want you to. I said, okay, what am I supposed to do? Oh, he was scared as hell. He thought I was going to fire him.
No, I don't want Bob. I thought you said.
Yeah.
Well, Vincent, anything else?
I would say today is probably one of the greatest days of my life. I love the NFL draft, and Mr. Herock, you're one of the most talented guys I ever seen.
Well, thank you.
And you have made my day for many years. The stories that you have told is going to be something I'm never going to forget here on 100 Yards of Football. I'd like to thank Harper for bringing you on. If I had to say the top 5 people who've ever had to come on this platform, I might have to put you up there as 1B or maybe 1A.
Oh, that's good. I love that.
The information that you provided has been outstanding. And draft season coming up, I don't know about the NFL Network. I don't know about Mel Kiper Jr., but if I had to say a person that I would contact, it would be you, Mr. Ken. But I got 2 questions I want to ask you before I end of the day. Now, as a gentleman, our producer, Mr. Logan Landers, know who I'm talking about. Now, this guy has a website. I know he's going to be looking today because he's always over here spying. He called Mr. Caleb Williams. It's going to be an epic bust. Then he gives a grade for Shedeur Sanders of being a 4th-round pick. They ended with me today. Answer those 2 questions right there.
He shouldn't be ever scouting again. Tell him to find another job. Caleb Williams, they can say what they want. He was talented. I personally, when I did the quarterbacks last year for the Raiders, and I would have taken Jaden Daniels. It was clear cut by my number 1 quarterback. See, I always, if I had to grade players, tight ends I was always able to grade because I recommended Dave Casper. Also a lot of other tight ends that I had that were great, but quarterbacks I always thought I was very strong on. My quarterbacks drafted were Doug Williams, Steve Young, Brett Favre. I mean, I can go on. Those are my. I actually drafted him.
What's your take on Caleb Williams, real quick, right now?
Caleb, very, very, very very talented. He can make all the throws, do everything. He's talented, smart, everything. Played with a bad team at SC his senior year. Stock went down a little bit, but not enough to take him out of the first pick. Could have either been first or second, wouldn't have mattered. Whoever was drafted second, if they took Daniels, they take Williams. He's with a team that's not ready for him yet. Yeah. They need more players. You got to surround yourself with players. Eventually, as he learns the game, he will make those players better. I had a quarterback named Jeff George, and we were trying to sign him. So we're in a meeting with him, his agent, Lee Steinberg, had our owner sitting in there, Taylor, Jim Haig. And so he wants all this money. And I says, Jeff, we can't do that. We need some money to get some players. I said, I got to get you some receivers so you can make great plays. He said, Mr. Herock, you don't have to get me any receivers. I'll make those receivers great. It always stuck with me. That quarterback will make great receivers. Go to New England. Start to name those great receivers. They had Gronk, obviously. He had those little guys in the slot all the time, but they weren't great. He goes down to Tampa Bay. takes them to the Super Bowl. He made the receivers. Mahomes, he's making those receivers. You go to the great quarterbacks, they make the players great. The quarterback makes them great. So, it always stuck with me. So whenever I was drafting a quarterback, well, he make our players great. I always thought Brett could. I always thought Steve Young would, and I knew Doug would. So I knew from then that's what I was looking for in a quarterback. If they're going to make my players great players.
Real quick, Ken, I'm not disagreeing with you in any way, shape, or form, but if you can't protect the quarterback, he's going to be looked at as a bust, right, by anybody.
That's all part of it. That's why I said Caleb right now, he doesn't have that line. Now, I'll tell you what. When I was in Tampa Bay, I had a good offensive line there too, protected Doug. When I came to Atlanta, the success we started to have a little bit was because of the offensive line. Our quarterbacks were always mediocre. I mean, he made a Pro Bowl, Chris did, but he was just an above-average player. But we made him better than what he was because of protection, and we did have some good receivers and runner. We had some good players there with them. So you have to. It's not just one thing. It's a combination of a lot of things to be able to mold that football team. It's not just though, but there is one constant factor. One constant factor that gets a winner. There's only one quarterback.
Yep.
Final, man, we could talk for 3 hours today. This has been like smoke. Final question for me. I want to say thank you. Blessings to your family. Thank you for coming on 100 Yards of Football. Harper, this is a great man when you're talking football. Shedeur Sanders, what would you have him rated on your board?
Right now, he's I hate to give ratings out, but let's just use top 5.
Okay.
Let's just use top 5. And there's 2 quarterbacks in the top 5 for sure in my mind. So wherever he's up there, who needs a quarterback? You see, it depends on who's drafted, if quarterbacks needed there. But what you will get, if they don't need a quarterback, somebody's going to trade up to get him. So he's going to be high. He has all the throws, all the mechanics are a little off. You know, I don't know if he's had good coaching, but he'll get better coaching in our league. But he has his own groove. He has a thing before practice where he has his own quarterback coach doing all these specific moves and throws and things that he needs to apply to the game. That's his workout before the game. Before the team comes out, he's out on the field going through this special workout. He's dedicated. I know he's going to study. I know he's going to be good. He has a chance to be a good quality quarterback.
Who's the other quarterback?
He's down in Miami.
Is he down here in the Peach State?
He's in Miami.
Oh man. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, he's in Miami.
Ken, clarify for us and our viewer, what do you look for? It's not just mechanics, but what in between the ears do you need to see or hear or find out about a guy? What are some of the qualities that you're looking for in terms of an upper tier guy, a first rounder?
Okay, there's a multitude of things, not just one thing.
And everybody's different.
Let's just start with the character. This guy's got to have the top character. He's my leader. He's your leader. He's got to be the best leader on your team. I have to see, is he a leader for that football team? If he's a leader there, he'll be a leader with us. If he can't lead, he can't play. It's that simple. Now, is he smart? That all goes into it. Intelligence, instincts, decision-making, leadership, all those qualities you got to dig into and find out. They all got to be top-notch to be a top-notch quarterback. And then from there, you go into the player. First thing I look for, arm strength. It's always been my big thing because I've always been around strong arm quarterbacks. That's not a necessity though. Let's go to Brady. Above average. Not a great arm. Good enough arm to play and good enough to beat you. Good enough to get the ball there on time. Because he had what he called instant decision making to get the ball there.
Yep.
So so you're looking for those things when you're looking at as a player. Now I'm not so worried about the release. They talk proper release over it. Talk about Rivers. You ever hear the guy named Rivers that played at San Diego, North Carolina State? You ever see him throw the ball? It was coming from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he got it there.
Somebody said, Ken, he can't play that release. He'll never be able to do it. I said, oh, wait a minute. Is this guy accurate? Yeah, he's throwing for 70%. Oh, he's very accurate. Then he's going to stay that way. If he can throw it that way, he's going to stay that way. We ain't changing nothing. Now, I might brush up on some feet, some foot movements, some of those things, some hip rotations and things those like that. But that motion is natural, just like when you're up here throwing a ball. If you can throw it naturally, then you see somebody push it out like that. No, it's always a natural, easy throw. They have that easy throw, or whether it comes from here, or here. Mahomes, he can throw it underhand. See? So those are a lot of specifics that I look for. And you have to be top notch in all of them to be able to, in my mind, to get my first round grades on them, my first top guy grades on them.
And Ken, there's one thing that you can't measure. Once a guy gets a big contract, he may not want to play as hard anymore. How do you measure the want to in a guy?
You measure that the way you see him play. Is he a competitor? If he's a competitor, I can give him $1, I can give him $1 million. He'll still be the same. That's a guy you're looking for. Yep. Is he a competitor? If you're a competitor, all the money in the world is not going to change. You're a competitor. You compete. I competed when I was making $10,000, and then when I was making in the league $500,000. You see, as a GM or whatever, I competed. You never give up that competition. The money doesn't bother you. You don't think about the money. I always thought about the money when I was playing. I was like, Jesus Christ, this guy's making $12,000. I'm making $10,000.
$1,500 signing bonus.
Yeah, $1,500.
Where are you going with me?
With that $1,500 went a long way. I bought my wife for my engagement ring, and we got married.
Well, Ken, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much. We'll have to have you back because the stories, I think, we're just beginning. And I'm sure there's some Pittsburgh fans and some Miami Dolphin fans that would like to hear their successful teams, especially in the 70s. And
we have good rivalries back then.
Kidding. Oh, it was amazing, man. The AFC just dominated for about 15 years in that little period of time. It was amazing part of football. But thank you so much for being a part of it.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Anything else that you want to say? I know you're kind of tapering back a little bit, but you're recommended pro prep is what you're doing now. We want Sean to get some work in there with the Las Vegas Raiders. So love that.
I told you he's leaving tomorrow for going out for the leaving tomorrow. Yeah, going out for the Kansas Colorado game.
And then
I said, what are you going there for? He said, well, I'm going to see your guy. I said, I told you. You keep telling me that Dion's kid. Just you only like him because he's Dion's kid. I said, no, I don't. I like him because I see a lot of qualities in him.
Yeah, I like him a little bit more because he's Dion's kid.
That's
I'm
right.
a Colorado State guy. I only love Dion 364 days a year.
Yeah.
I can't stand him on game day when he
plays.
He
has a chance to be coach of the year, If he can win these next two games, he'd be in there with 10-2. You have a chance maybe to get into college football playoffs. I don't know. Be very close. I hope he gets a chance at it.
That's
great rebuilding program. He did a great job. People really pounded him when he came in doing what he was doing, but he knew what he was doing.
Yep.
If you can play, you're staying. If you can't play, get out.
He's climbing a ladder that's a little bit different than all of us, but each day it's like he's on a higher rung of it. He knows what.
But here's what's happened: everybody's climbing the same ladder, the same way he's doing it. They're doing the same thing. Go to Ole Miss. Go to Ole Miss. Every player that's on my list, I got 15 of them. Is a transfer portal guy.
Yeah.
Every one. Top guys, right down to Jackson Dart. who I like. I like him as a quarterback too.
Yeah.
He's a transfer guy, you see. You go on. I go on. Can't look at Ward. Ward's a transfer. Two colleges. Washington State, and Incarnate something. I don't even know what the school was. I'd never heard of it.
Yeah.
Incarnate Ward. I
Yep.
thought I thought it was a prep school or something. No.
No.
You go down every one of them. As I look, I mean, you go. Obviously Sanders, Jackson State. I go down here. I go to Jackson Dart, USC. I go to Curtis Rourke. There's another kid here. Ohio University. 4 years over there. Comes over to taking the team. They're 8-0.
Yep.
No, 9-0 maybe now. 9-0.
Yep.
They got if they beat Ohio State, they beat Ohio State. Just think of that. Indiana, first-year coach, come out of JMU.
Yep. They beat Michigan and were favored last week for the first time in over 50 years.
Yeah.
You were a young buck back when they.
That's right. I was.
To beat Michigan.
I was starting into my. I was with the Raiders right in the middle of my run as a director.
Well, as we head out now, the humility of you, Dion owes everything that he is now in his success because of you. I think that's what I heard you say a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Okay.
Last word,
guys.
Vincent, last word.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ken. It's been, I don't have to say no more. The mic has just dropped. You one of the best that I've ever been around. Like I say, I'm going to take this to my dream tonight. When I hit that pillow, I'm going to think about Mr. Ken and the NFL draft. Coming from someone that's done it for a long time, to all you people out there that's writing on the websites, social media, this is what a true scout looks like. He played the game at a high level and was part of one of the most powerful organizations in the 70s. The Silver and Black, Al Davis, commitment to excellence. Thank you, Mr. Ken.
Thanks a lot, Vince. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you. Stay in touch, buddy.
Yep, we appreciate it. And so for those who have tuned in, thank you. It's a very special episode here where you get a man who's played, he coached, he scouted, he was a general manager in high school, college, the AFL, the NFL. It's unbelievable. Your resume is certainly something special. So thank you for being a part of that, Ken. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. Our special guest today has been Ken Herock. And we thank you for tuning in. We hope everybody has a fantastic day.
Okay, guys.